Bizarre is intended for mature, open-minded audiences only. If you are easily offended, we suggest you turn this wacky shit straight off.
I'm balls deep in The Last of Us 2, and I gotta say, there's something about playing this game right now that feels a bit like a mistake.
Right? Yeah.
Like, don't get me wrong, it's one of the most beautiful experiences in game I've ever had, much like the first one was. I mean, did we all play the first one?
I did not, because I don't have a PS4.
I totally passed it.
Oh, first one's awesome.
Nobody was talking to you, Ron. We know you don't fucking roll with this. Yeah, the first one had me in tears in 10 minutes, like sobbing with that intro. But the second one, it's just so good, man. But it's such a gut punch. Like, it's all about death and loss, and it just feels like a tough time to be playing
in the midst of a fucking pandemic, essentially.
God damn, no.
Entertainment in general is tricky.
Ron, I'd like to paint a picture for you real fast. And
Did
you get it figured out?
I think so. Yeah, if you guys can hear me.
You sound better. You sound better.
You sound great. We sound tinny, but you sound better.
Well, yeah.
I want this to be in the cast. So are we recording? Are we good?
Yeah, we're rolling.
We're gonna back up going. Yeah.
There is a scene in The Last of Us 2. It's a game I'm playing right now.
No spoilers.
Yeah, I shouldn't give the spoiler.
It's already been done, dude.
Well, it's not a spoiler.
It's
not like a major story spoiler.
Let's just say right now, spoiler warning. Anybody who
Okay.
wants to skip ahead like a minute or so, whatever.
It's not, from what I can tell, like a major story point spoiler. It's just a really sweet moment done in a cinematic way that shocked me, and it plays well with our content. So the game takes place 30 years or 25 years after a global pandemic of sorts that it's an apocalypse situation. And you are in The Last of Us, you play like a 35-year-old dude named Joel, who maybe 45 because it jumps forward 20 years. But anyways, you befriend a young girl who becomes like your adopted daughter, basically. And so you travel this land together. And in this cutscene in The Last of Us 2, for her, I think she's about 20, for her 20th birthday, he takes her to, maybe she's younger, 18, I don't know. He takes her to fucking
Hootenanny?
No, I'm so sorry.
Hootenanny.
My kid's screaming, so I got distracted.
The pandemic anyway is pretty cool because it's actually based on a little bit of truth. You remember, Ron? You remember the ants they had that fungus that would get in their brains, and the fungus could control the ant. Remember that one?
Yeah, I remember some sort of zombie bug.
Cordyceps mushrooms.
Yeah, it's exactly the same thing except with humans. So these humans get this fungus, and it controls their minds. They become killers. But then it also devours them and make them into monsters. It's really, really fascinating. Really cool.
It's really cool. He takes her to a museum and puts her inside of a shuttle that went to the moon, and finds an old tape of a shuttle launch, and puts headphones on her. And she's obsessed with space exploration. The only thing she's ever known about it is from books she's read, because she was born after we stopped going to space. Mm-hmm. And so he puts these headphones on her and tells her to close her eyes, and it's from one of the shuttle launches. So it plays that in its entirety, and all of a sudden, in her mind, she's there. And it does this in such a visually stunning way that I'll never forget that moment in gaming. It was really beautifully done. I'll send you the YouTube on that, Ron, because I think you'd watch that and just smile. This is like all you could do, and it was incredible.
Yeah.
Yeah, the cinematics in games these days, I mean, they far trump movies. Because they can control everything so much better, than real life. It's insane. It's really cool what they could do with video games these days.
Well, we got to get moving along because we have tried to do this at least three.
No, we're trying to not do it again.
3 or 4 times. And we've got plenty of time. It's all we're talking about tonight. Although I do want to start off with, it's been a weird week since we last talked. Now, when, those of you that joined us last week, you were listening along to this person. She goes, I called her she. This person prefers they, them. That's the pronoun. But it was Diaz Love. We were listening to their recording of the chop shootings. Hard to forget, really. The very fucking next night, Diaz is part of. Now she left. She said she was going to leave. They. It's hard.
It's hard.
I'm trying.
It's hard, but I get it. Like we all got to try. It's hard. It's fucking hard.
I mean well. So they said that they were going to leave Seattle. It was just too much, and you can understand that. I don't know when Diaz came back to Seattle, but there was this march down on I-5. Well, it marched to I-5. It seemed like they were kind of set up in this one particular part of I-5 downtown. And there were a few cars parked sideways, or a few cars blocking the off-ramp and on-ramp of that area. And they had taken over this, I don't know, maybe 40 or 50 people. Seemed like, it's hard to tell when
Something
it's
like that
wide open. Could be
Seems about right.
Could be a bit more, but about that. And once again, as I said, the night that I was playing that, on the episode that we were playing that footage, I had been waking up in the middle of the night or 3 a.m. Whenever shit was going on, I woke up just as it was happening or right before. This night was no exception. I hadn't really been watching because things kind of mellowed after the cops had moved back in. They'd taken it over, and there was still another line with protesters. So there was still some activity, but nothing like what it had been. And yet, it was like between 1 and 2 in the morning, and I wake up.
Did your eyes just shoot open like there's a disturbance?
No, it never was like that. It never was like that. It was just like I had to get up to pee. And then when I climbed back into bed, I was checking.
So mundane.
Yeah, so Facebook. And then it was like, oh, shit, something's going on. Well, I happened to check Facebook. And the second I did, Omari popped up with a live feed. And I was like, oh, fucking, are you kidding me? Like the second I got on. And then Omari is just like, oh, shit. Holy shit. Oh, my God. Oh, my God. And just like, and I couldn't see what, like he had just started streaming. He wasn't actually going to stream that night.
This is after they got hit.
Yeah. And he lived right by this section of I-5, and he saw all the activity going on. And so he just decided to show up and just, check in with everybody, see how everyone was doing. And not really as a reporter this time, just as somebody that, wanted to take the night off, and just like they were dancing in the street and, having a good old time, but blocking it up and protesting. So he went over there to see what was going on. And right when he got over there, this car whipped around the makeshift barricade of, a van and a couple other cars that the protesters had parked sideways across the, 4 or 5 lane chunk of I-5 at that section. It was completely blocked off. Well, I mean, not completely blocked off, but it was clear that the street was closed up, and they were just kind of in that one place. And then there was an overpass, maybe 100 yards away from that. So when Omari went live, he was running like toward that overpass, and then he finally panned.
I'd say like 100 yards south.
Yeah,
where they were.
When he finally panned over to the left, you could see bodies on the ground and a whole bunch of people crying and like trying to help them. What had happened is that car came around the van. I'm sure almost everyone listening at this point has seen the footage or heard about it, even across the pond in other countries. It was a pretty big story, or not. I don't know. But the car flew around the van and smacked right into 2 of the protesters. One of those was somebody named Summer Taylor, was it? Summer Taylor. And the other one was Diaz Love. And now Diaz was live streaming at that exact moment. You can watch her video.
It's been taken down. I tried to find it today.
Oh, that's interesting.
Well, or the one that you sent, the link initially that you sent. But I have the audio here I was pulling up of the hit. I don't know if it's too gruesome to play just listening to the audio or not. Be warned.
Yeah. It kind of, even when you see the video, honestly, it's kind of the sound that really brings it home. But go ahead and play it. I think it's important, and you can skip ahead 30 seconds or so here if you don't want to hear it.
Come on, baby.
Oh, my God! 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 Oh, my Oh my God! Oh my God! Jim! Oh my God! Fuck, man! Oh shit! God damn it!
Now that wasn't Omar. Kind of sounds like Omar. That was somebody that was kind of standing south, like John Mark said. That someone that got actual hit footage, and there were a few cameras. When they got hit, they went flying up like 15 feet in the air, like in height.
It looked terrible.
Probably closer to like 20 yards in length. It seemed like they're in the air forever, just flopping like rag dolls.
Yeah.
One of those was fucking Diaz Love, as if they hadn't had a traumatic enough time being involved with the Seattle protests. Good God. Now, Summer unfortunately passed away, I think 2 days ago. When they took, it's another they, when they took them in, it was pretty clear that, that was a worse case than Diaz's. In fact, they both were rushed into emergency surgery, but now it's coming out that Summer's family were called basically to come say their goodbyes. So the question is, now this was immediately being, of course, in the heat of the moment, anything could be said, but this was immediately being touted as a terror attack and a purposeful, hit. And I don't know. I've looked at that footage. I would believe that is something that some demented fuck would do. But there's a few things going on here. One, and this doesn't mean anything conclusively, of course, but it's worth mentioning that the driver was black, only because a lot of people were immediately saying this was a white supremacist who was attacking a peaceful Black Lives Matter protest. Well, that wasn't true. It's also true that the two victims were white. But watching that footage, now there are a few clips. There's only one that I saw that followed the car, and the car, by the way, was a Jaguar. It's like a little sports car. Wasn't something that you would guess somebody would plan on plowing through a group of protesters, but I suppose if you're plowing through anybody, you're not quite right in the head. So I'm trying to play fair here in terms of like motive, because I don't think we've had an official statement from this guy, right?
I don't think so either. I know he was sentenced to, he was in court today. I saw the footage of where they show you just like his body,
But did they officially
Did they
sentence
say
him?
any of his statements or word
I
or
didn't
anything
hear
like
any
that?
of it. No, I'm sorry.
Well, to clear it up too, was that section of I-5 closed off or was it open?
It was closed
No,
off
it was
by
closed
the
off.
protest.
He
He
had-
closed it off.
From what I understand, he had gone up a ramp that was an off ramp.
Yeah, the
like
wrong
an exit
way.
only to get there. Like he intentionally drove up a wrong way off ramp to get onto the freeway to do whatever he had intended on doing.
My gut tells me, and of course, what the fuck do I know? Certainly wasn't there, but my gut tells me that this was possibly somebody who was a bit aggro over yet another blockage by the protesters, keeping him from getting home in a reasonable hour, or maybe going to work on time.
Right, because this
And
was
maybe-
it like
So
late at night.
It was like 1:30, I think.
I don't want to try. I don't want to get like too into it, but I did read something on Twitter that explains. Like I said, I mean it's fucking Twitter, so who fucking knows? You know what I mean?
Yeah,
but there was apparently something else going on, some other types of protests happening in the country where this guy was originally from that were like having the same similar effects, like similar polarizing effects that Black Lives Matter can have in this country. So the theory was that, or the speculation was that he was sort of looking at that the same way as having the same effects that it was having in his country, and he was upset about that. But like I said, I'm not going into specifics.
I haven't heard any of that.
But yeah, so that was one thing that I read. So I don't know how much any of that is the truth or not, but it seemed like there was a possible motive being ascribed to his doing this.
It's totally
is all I'm
possible.
saying.
Anything's possible at this point because we don't know. But like I said, that the footage that shows him, most of it cuts as soon as the two people get hit, and then you kind of see him going off Like he keeps going. But the one piece of footage that carries on him, he kind of stops. He almost completely stops right after hitting them and puts his hazards on. And then a handful of the protesters gave chase, as you can imagine, to the point where they actually caught up to him. And when they were trying to get him out of the car, they're smacking the car saying, "Get the fuck out of the car." And then he took off. That also doesn't really seem like behavior of someone who's like, "Fuck it, I'm going to go mow some of these protesters down." But
yeah, it was
I don't
weird,
fucking know.
right?
The whole thing was weird. The whole thing was strange.
It felt
like what?
Strange, but
I'm not trying to ascribe anything to it. I'm not trying to ascribe him as one way or the other. It just seemed like, looking at that footage, I was trying to make sense of it from that standpoint. Nothing really makes sense. No theory 100% makes sense to me based on what I saw. But when
that's the crazy thing, is because like they apparently tested him, and they're saying that he was not impaired, like he wasn't drunk, he wasn't on drugs.
Yeah,
No.
so that's big. That's huge.
So either he was like super sleep deprived and out of it or whatever, or he knew what he was doing. But then the footage that you see when he gets up to the protesters, it kind of looks like it almost looks like he was surprised that the van that was blocking part of the ramp was there. And he was like, "Oh," and kind of swerves around it. It's like, "Oh shit, people." And then swerves again and like, "Oh shit, more people."
But then he fishtails right into the two.
But it's almost like, it looked like he accelerated at that point too. Like, you know what I'm talking about? Like, it almost looks like he slowed down for a sec and then accelerated into the people.
Yeah, it's just weird. And then he stops, and it's like, well, none of that makes. But the thing is that situation doesn't make any sense. So if you were going to be someone who's behind the wheel thinking you're going to do something, and then the reality that hits you, you're going to react differently.
That could have been like, "Oh shit, what did I just happen?" Right. That's a good point. But also, I don't feel like he could have actually seen Diaz and Summer.
No,
when he was speeding up on the other side of that van, because they were basically right on the other side of the van. So he swerved around and missed the van. Then he came back and he kind of lost control a little bit and fishtailed. I feel like that fishtail was right before he hit them.
I agree. And the way he swerves like that, it almost looks like an accident. If he wasn't driving,
it almost looks like a bunch of things. It's like, it's crazy.
The thing is,
it's the craziest piece of footage.
Where we live, it's, you have a lot of reckless drivers. I have a lot of family that live in Seattle, and I've rode with them, and they're all fucking maniacs. They all drive 80 miles an hour on the fucking freeway.
Yeah.
So it's one of those things, like if the guy was like late from work, fuck, I want to go home. Fuck, the road's blocked. I have to go 40 miles just to go down and around. Fucking, I'm just going to go through. And if he's speeding at 80 miles an hour and then come across this and loses control, like I said, it's 1 in the fucking morning. It's late at night. Yeah. And even if you're illegally, going through these barricades to get, to your turn off to go home, who at fucking 1 in the morning, you're going to expect a bunch of people walking across the freeway.
Well, let me ask you this,
because it's not lit.
Let me pose this question. Have you ever in your life been so irritated by being like blocked off, like, "Oh, I have to go around
apple blossom every year"?
Have you ever been so irritated that you willingly drove the wrong way through a barricade, a police barricade, that, you know what I mean? And
but
so
close.
That's a decision. That's a very specific decision.
But I don't think it was a police barricade. I think it was the protesters that had set up cars to block the ramp, right?
The highway was closed. I-5 was closed. He had to get on the freeway. It was closed.
It was closed by the police?
Yes, it was closed.
That's a huge thing to the story.
What ramp are they claiming, are they thinking? It was all theory when I last saw. I haven't checked in with this story. What ramp are they thinking? Like, how far away from where he hit the protesters was he?
I would imagine they had to have closed it down just one exit past where they were going to be, right? They can't close all the freeway down for exits.
Right, one or two. I don't know specifically, but yes, they had been closing the highway patrol, or the police had been closing that section of the freeway down for about a week, because they'd been doing that for multiple days in a row. So it wasn't like there was unexpected for them to be there. They knew they were going to be there, and they had been closing it down because they were going to be there.
Also, couldn't you see a sideways white van. I mean, even in the shitty, like, dark, dim cell phone footage, there was no mistaking that there was a parked van across the freeway right there.
Mhm.
I get going fast, but I've driven that high. We've all driven that freeway at least 100 times.
Sure.
There is no corner that is so sharp that you don't really know what's coming. Not at that stretch. So
Yeah.
I'm confused
No,
how
and
he was going so fast on the other side of the van. Like, why was he approaching whatever was ahead? Was he texting? Was he just not paying attention? And all of a sudden it doesn't make sense. Like, I'm trying to figure out. You see what I mean, though? It's like no matter what avenue you go down, it only goes so far.
As it unrolls, it kind of makes sense. I mean, the guy hit somebody. It's like hitting a deer. I'm not putting the life of a deer and a human in the same spot. That's not what I'm saying. You're driving, and even if you're excessive speeds, you're gonna. There's always a trigger in your head. They even say when you're trying, like, if you're gonna hit a deer, is to speed up. I don't know. I'm not making excuses. For
what?
At
Just
all. No,
like-
it's actually it's a thing. If you're going over the pass and you see a deer and there's no way of getting around it, you drive through it. You accelerate through the deer.
I
You
never
do.
heard that.
It'll.
But that's
Yeah.
kind of what John Mark and I
Always
did
heard
coming down the pass.
I've heard that
You'll
for
hit
so
him
many
hard enough, he won't
times.
suffer. I mean, like, what?
It's a little bit of a two. It's like you're driving around a fucking 110 bullet, and the thing is, if you slam on the brakes and the impact could cause you to go out of control and do more harm to other people around you. With the whole mentality behind it is like the deer will go over the top of you. If you're in a car, you'll like go over the top of you, and you'll keep on going. If you slam on the brakes,
It's a problem for the guy
turn.
behind you, not you.
well, I mean, it's a thing. It's just something I was always told, even when I was 16. Is to,
I mean, it kind of makes sense, I guess. I don't
Well,
know.
it made sense in the remember when John Mark and I were coming down the pass in the middle of the winter and that deer was headed
I
right
never
toward
forget
us.
the last plate.
It ended up hitting. I mean, John Mark didn't slam on the brakes. We were just like, "Duh!" You do that thing where you sort of grip, and I was hitting like the imaginary brakes or accelerator on my passenger floor, and the deer just kept on going, and it ended up hitting the trunk. Like we heard
It ran
it go
into the back of the fucking car.
as it was jump.
Yeah.
I think it was like in the process of jumping, and it like hit its hooves on the
God,
trunk.
I would give fucking
From-
anything to get like a slow-mo video of every moment of that moment. Just like your face, or John Mark's face, and the deer's
the
face.
deer's face.
Just like every
John Mark's like, oh, I'm like, oh, the deer's like, "Meh."
just fucking repeatedly
Fucking
slamming on the
Tommy
floor in
boy.
front of you like you have a break.
Well, I feel bad for even so
coming back
quickly
from
going
Cell
into a
Attack,
joke.
right?
That was coming back from, it must have been Cavell Attack. Cause that was
Cell
the
Attack and High on Fire.
one. Yeah, and Windhammer. Fucking hell of a
Windhand.
show, bruh. Windhand. Wait, what
From-
is it? Windhand.
from the
Hmm.
from the video footage, that's what it kind of looks like. From what I've seen, anyway, it looks like the guy's just hauling ass. And when he hits the two people, I mean, it's fucking wow. You know what I mean? Like I remember texting you guys like those people.
I gotta
are dead.
say,
Yeah, I was shocked
But-
that any of them were alive.
But if any of us think about it, if you're going, you slow down. You're like, fuck, I just hit somebody, hit
There's a
the
sound.
hazards. But like, listen, seriously, if you had a group of people, 10 people, fucking chasing you, after all the shit that's been going on, there's people, innocent people that were murdered, they're beat to death. Would you actually stop, or would you keep going?
yeah, no,
that's the
that's
question.
problematic for me
You
as
would probably
well.
keep going if
Because
they're
he
trying
did
to pull you
stop.
out of the fucking car.
He didn't go again until the angry protesters had caught up to him. There's footage of that.
Yeah,
too.
that's what's weird about this whole thing, because it's like if he had if it seems like if he had malice in his heart and ill intent, like he would have just been like, yeah, I did it, and just kept going. But like, why did he? But it's like
He stopped.
human beings are complicated. We're complicated. He might have done something and then said like, fuck, what did I just do? Like, I gotta stop and think. He was in shock, right?
Yeah.
Like
Sure, 100%.
for whatever reason. And then he was like, oh, now I got to get out of here. Because
Yeah, you can make a determined decision to shoot somebody. And then after you do that, you're like, holy shit. It occurs to you what happened. And you do go into a shock. So,
because you don't
him
understand what the
stopping,
repercussions are going to be.
him stopping and putting his hazards on absolutely in no way means that this was an accident. It's so fucking strange and so sad. It was just like, so Diaz is 32, I think, and Summer was in her in their 20s. Sorry,
They were like 24 or something.
Really fucking young.
Man,
And they're just dancing in the street. I mean,
There's something I
yes,
wanna-
it was I-5, but you know,
There's a feeling about this
Dance
I'd
on
like
the
to
Fruit.
share. It's a bit dark, but I
think we're
can't
already
get it
there.
out of my head. I guess so. There was a second video that you ended up sending us. I think it was you in our text, and it was another perspective of the hit.
Yeah.
And the sound was so clear.
yeah,
And-
it's hard. It's hard to listen to.
The sound when those girls are hit.
That's the one from the overpass, right?
Yeah. There is it's like nothing you've ever heard before, but you immediately recognize what you're hearing.
Yeah,
Oh yeah, no, it's like a baseball bat against fucking moving steel.
it's
You
a
know what I
very
mean?
distinct
It's a
sound.
whack.
And
There-
then they're just in the air for so long. But Diaz was live streaming up into the actual hit, and that footage
And
was
then you
crazy.
just see the spin. I
Because-
couldn't believe she was live streaming it during the hit. I couldn't believe it.
I know.
So one thing that we haven't talked about yet was that this is not the first time that night that a car ran through those protesters.
Yeah, there's a blue car.
Oh, really? So they were
Oh,
like
yeah.
already on edge.
Yeah, I don't think anybody was hit, but it seemed like
So what happened? So I watched that stream. I think it was the stream that you posted, or that you were like, watch this or whatever.
Yeah.
And it was I don't know, that stream was like an hour long or something. And at one point they were not on the freeway yet. And a car, it was a blue Hyundai, like people were going car, and it like came through and it didn't hit anybody, but it looked like it was trying to accelerate through them. It's what it seemed like. Went up the street
Yeah.
and they were like, hey, watch out, they're turning around. And maybe they have, they were like concerned and saying, expressing their concerns and stuff. And then apparently one of the chase vehicles that the protesters had to kind of try to keep them safe rammed into it when it turned around to keep it from coming back into them, because it looked like it was turning around to come back into them. And what I was watching the chatter on the people commenting on the stream, and apparently I can't verify any of this because this was after the fact and I wasn't there and I wasn't on a police scanner, but apparently after the fact, like literally like maybe seconds after this happened, suddenly a bunch of cop cars started like shooting into the area, right? And so what they were saying was that the person who was in the blue car was either an off-duty police officer or an ex-police officer, and that they had called like a hotline and they had heard them on a police scanner saying, hey, I'm going to be attacked by these protesters. You got to get here. And like 10 cop cars showed up in the precinct within like 45 seconds, which
Was
that
there
kind of
recording
response
that
time,
police scanner.
that
audio?
kind of response time for something like that is very highly suspect if they weren't like clued in somehow. You know what I'm saying?
Well, they would have known that the protesters were gathering there, so they could have. Devil's advocate. Maybe they could have had a small troop ready to act if something got out of hand. But I didn't hear the
maybe.
So did
You
they
didn't see
get the
that part?
No, did they get the driver of the car?
There's footage of the license plate, and it apparently is like a woman who was either former SPD or current SPD that was off duty.
Oh, that's right.
But there was but she definitely drove through them. Like
That's right, and people.
it wasn't
know
like she
they're calling
didn't
for
look
her
like she was
arrest.
necessarily trying to hit them, but she aggressively drove through them.
Well, here's the thing: people are driving into protesters. That's happening. It's happening all across the country. So this 100% could have been that. It's tough to know at this point, but it was interesting because all of the chatter, it lit up like crazy. I think like this was again, by the time anyone was realizing what was going on, it was like 2:30 in the morning. There were 3,000 people watching the live feed that I was watching. It went from like 400 or something right after they ran them over to like thousands. So it was catching on like wildfire that this had just happened. And for the next 6 hours or so, it was nothing but this was a white supremacist terror attack. No one seemed to have any evidence to back that up, but that was just chatter. I guess that's what the knee-jerk assumption was. Then they found out that the driver was black, and then they found out that, more of the footage came out, and then all of a sudden, people started saying the same things. They're like, wait a minute, why did he stop? Why did this happen that way? And, what did that roadblock look like? What ramp did he come up? I did see that someone set up a GoFundMe page for him immediately, which is like, what's that about?
Yeah.
Like, dude, you don't know anything
for
about
that guy?
what's
For that
going
fucking
on.
guy?
Yeah, for that guy.
Oh,
Just
fuck off.
this whole
Get
thing.
fucked. Get fucked.
Oh my God. At least half, maybe more,
His
of this
lawyers are
entire
probably telling him
country
not to say anything.
needs to get fucked, because the comments that were coming in under this and are still continuing to come in, there are so many people like giving the laugh emoji and, saying play stupid games, win stupid prizes, all this shit. It's like, motherfuckers, two people just died.
It's bad,
Or one
dude. It's
person
fucking
died.
bad. And I don't know, like, you can't contribute all that to people just being trolls. You know what I mean?
No, that's exactly
it's way
it.
beyond that.
And-
It's
and-
fucking way beyond that.
And most of them have their name and photo attached to their statement. That's how comfortable they are being this much of a cunt. I like the idea of a free country. I don't like the idea of people feeling like it's okay to laugh that somebody just got mowed down while protesting. You can hate them blocking up the freeways all you want. That's fair. And you can hate, or you can disagree with their movement, but laughing at someone that died is like next level. And it's really been disheartening.
Where are we at the point now where it's like the rats eating each other when they're too
Let's
many
say
close
anonymity,
together? Is that where we are? Is
It's
that
the
it?
internet anonymity where they don't.
Dude, even with they're not anonymous.
But that's
they
the
can
thing,
be
they're not
found.
that
They can be
anonymous.
doxxed. Like,
Yeah.
and it's just like they feel comfortable doing this shit. Like, it's just like,
Well,
fuck.
what I hope is happening, and what I think is happening, is that in a lot of ways, a lot of things are converging right now. And what I hope is happening is that like all the shit is sort of floating to the surface, and we're just trying to collect it and put it in its place. And that is a very ugly process to watch. I feel like overall it's going to be better on the other side of all the shit, but I could be wrong. It could be
It's hard to say.
some sort of civil war being set up. I've
I've had a lot of discussions with other people besides us. It's a lot of family and stuff like that. And it's getting to the point where like people really don't realize the only way to get past things like this is to unite together to fight the common fucking problem. Black, white, Chinese, it doesn't fucking matter. You unite together. All this is doing is splitting and dividing everybody apart.
Yeah, isn't it interesting
what I
that
mean?
no matter what we're talking about, it can be race, it can be opinions on cops, it can be wearing a fucking mask during a time of
It's
pandemic.
dividing.
We're always so easily divided into two camps, against and for.
Red or blue?
And all the way down. I mean, that's why the two-party system drives me fucking crazy, is because it's just so clearly set up to just keep us barking at each other. And we have been since the dawn of time. By the way, speaking of the dawn of time in our American politics, I have to say, if you guys have Disney Plus, they just added Hamilton, and we watched it the other night, and holy shit. I knew it had to be good because...
Hey, Ron, sorry. I'm so sorry. Sorry, pause. Logan, say, good night, Uncle Ronnie. Ronnie. Good night, Uncle Ronnie.
Yeah.
Good night, Logie boy.
Ronnie.
That was a worthy interruption. But yeah, check out Hamilton. It's fucking amazing. I didn't know
Hamilton's
anything
great.
about it, honestly. I didn't know the cast. I didn't know the twist in some of the the characters. I didn't know anything about it. It was fucking spellbinding, and it's like 2.5 hours long, and it just flies by because it's so fucking good. But anywho, and timely
Back to the-
in a
back
lot
to
of
the-
strange
the-
ways.
the division thing was there was a doctor that was a famous doctor during the Holocaust, and he was asked questions like, why didn't you do anything, you know? And he said, well, like in the beginning when they started going after certain people, we just stayed shut because they weren't after us, you know. And then he said finally when it came down to the Jews, you know, there was nobody to help us. There was nobody to help us, you know. And it kind of runs in that way. That's how they managed to do what they did. What Hitler managed to do was divide the public into those people and turn everybody against each other, you know. And that's how they did it.
I think it was Genghis Khan that said divide and conquer. That was a long time ago. That was at least 50 years ago.
We need to
a long time.
We need to group together, and we need to solve a common problem that we could all do without any kind of act of so-called racism and everything else.
That's what the point of all these protests is, Lyle.
Correct me if I'm wrong. Is Black Lives Matter funded by white people?
Well, I'm sure white people are donating money into.
I mean,
it's not led by
at the head of the top.
I don't think so.
I must be listening to Joe Rogan too much, because that's what I was hearing on Joe Rogan's podcast.
I don't know. I haven't heard that they're white.
The fact of the matter is that it's like at this point in time, it's really impossible to say what the definitive truth is about anything like that, right? Because there's all kinds of people having their various agendas as to what they want to say to you and what they want you to believe.
Oh, for sure.
So it's
and
really,
I'm pretty open-minded about it.
It's really hard. And the whole point of Black Lives Matter is not that only Black Lives Matter. It's that the point is that Black people in this country have been inordinately suppressed and what's the word I'm looking for? Oppressed. And it's not that we don't matter either. It's just that they have a very different experience than what we do. That's not the point of it.
I read a fucking statistic that blew my mind. If you're a black male in this world, you have a 1 in 1,000 chance of being shot by a police officer. Just in general.
Just in general. That's in the entire world?
In the United States is what I read, but I don't know about the whole world. Yeah.
Well, here's on blacklivesmatter.com, the co-founders are Patrice Concoller, is a black woman, Alicia Garza, a black woman, and Opal Tamedi, a black woman.
I'll have to find out what podcast. It was one of Joe Rogan's podcasts. He had a guy on there that was against the whole. He was African American himself. He's a gun guy.
I know who you're talking about. I know he's the one that was saying that. I don't think he was saying that they're white, but he was saying that they're Marxists, or some of them were Marxists, and he was pointing out how some of their tactics, I suppose, were sort of Marxist. But I don't know if that's true.
This comes back to it's very similar to the whole Antifa thing, where it's like people are saying, well, Antifa is this and Antifa is that, and it's like, well, there's not really any such thing as Antifa. It's just like an idea. It's a concept. There's not like a definitive, like group of people that are like, we are Antifa and this is our agenda.
It's like I don't like pineapple on pizza.
Yeah, it's not that. I don't like that, and that's the problem. It's like you can say you are BLM and you can have you're over here, and you can say I'm BLM and you're over there. And like there's all kinds of people that can like say that they're this, but they might not be exactly what you think that is. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, I just Googled Black Lives Matter Marxists. There's all sorts of pages you can research, make up your own opinion. There seems to be some ties with at least one or two of the founders back in the day, but who knows how these things, if you've done something like when you were 19 years old and then you go on to do other things, what you did at 19 years old will always be attached to you. So it could be something like that, or they could be Marxists. I don't fucking know. But the point is that, I mean, your point of coming together, Lyle, is absolutely correct. But I don't, I remember we used to talk about this in, the whole Ronnie Reagan speech, where the only thing that will likely have that effect would be some sort of alien attack, something that is threatening the planet. And therefore, of course, Watchmen did a play off of this too. Was
Sure.
this idea of suddenly all we are is Earthlings, and I used to think that could be a beautiful moment where we have a true alien threat, and they're coming to fuck our shit up. And I liked to at least entertain the thought that we would come together and fight them and agree. And for the most part, I don't know if I believe that anymore.
I just watched
we are
the day
arguing
the Earth
about
stood
wearing
still
masks
on
during.
Sunday because of this reason.
You got what?
I just watched the day the Earth stood still again because of this reason.
Yeah. Well, it worked better in the day the Earth stood still. I think we're insane right now. I think that. I mean, we played some of those mask. I refuse to wear a mask videos last week.
Fuck.
There are like 50 more this week that are even crazier. Like these people are they're insane about the mask wearing thing. If we can stay divided about such a simple thing in the time of a pandemic, I don't know that we would all get together in perfect harmony, enjoy a Coke, and go to battle against extraterrestrials that mean to do our anuses harm. I don't know that we would. I think that we would still be arguing all the way up until they finally just landed and
Until Proby McProberton
easily
I
probed
thought of-
us
I-
into
I
the
thought
next
of a good,
dimension because
I
we've
thought of a
already
good thing.
divided our own selves, so we're ready to be conquered. Go ahead,
I
Jamar.
thought of a good thing the other day about the whole like mask situation, where it's like if you come across somebody who's like, I'm not gonna wear a mask because that's impinging on my freedoms, you should ask them like, okay, so do you drive a car? And to say yes, then you should ask them, well, when you come to a red light, what do you do? Or a stop sign? Do you stop? And if they say yes, then you ask them, well, why? Why do you stop? Right? Why do you stop? It's because we have, as a society, decided that it's probably safer for you to stop and check both directions before you go, or at the red light, stop because there's going to be other cars coming. If you go through that red light, you are free. You are free to go through that red light, but there are going to be consequences to
Yeah.
that. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
It's the same fucking thing.
Yeah. Well, except
I'm in
the
conclusion,
political
I think
leaders.
everybody's just fucking stupid.
They're politicized. They have been people have been weaponized by their political leaders one way or the other. And this is something that has happened more and more, and people are just they're just following. And it's so funny how I'll hear like how many times have we said you're just following everyone else, you sheeple? How many times have we heard that? Isn't that ironic that 1,000 other people have said that exact phrase and they are just copying other people that they saw saying it? It's ironic that this ilk is referring to everybody else as sheeple and being a bunch of fucking pussies for putting that mask on. It blows my fucking mind. But we've covered this ground ad nauseum at this point. But I do believe at this stage in human evolution that we would, all of us, be anally probed by the master race coming to get us out in space. And maybe we deserve it, because I don't think that we're going to bury that hatchet. I think that we will continue to have racism, and I think we'll continue to have political divides. I think we'll continue to have people that will be protesting war, even galactic war, when it's like a matter of, well, either we fight or we all die. You'll have people that are passive enough that they won't want to fight. You're still going to have people that are like super aggro and they want to, they're just in their spirit and their enthusiasm, they're alienating other people and they won't be able to get them on board. And we just kind of bicker and argue our way into oblivion. I'm no longer comforted by that Ronald Reagan's speech that an alien threat could, in fact, bind us together, at least for a little while.
I mean, the farce of an alien thing happening, I don't think that's ever going to happen in our lifetime. But like the happening of maybe a fucking global destroying fucking asteroid coming and hitting the fucking planet, I could see that. And it's just like if you play Armageddon in your head, I guarantee everybody's going to be standing around fucking looting, stealing shit.
I don't want to close
That's how
my
gone we
eyes.
are. That's how gone we are. Everybody be looting, fucking stealing.
I don't
That's
want to
it.
wear your mask because it fits
Don't wear
me
your
weird,
mask.
and I
You
don't
gotta
want
walk
to
down
wear
the-
a thing.
Walk down those aisles, the arrow pointing the wrong
Just
way at your grocery stores. Yeah.
Yeah, we're rebels, and we're freedom fighters by just not going along with it. Jesus Christ. Anyway, so yeah, R.I.P. Summer. Tragic fucking death. I'm glad that Diaz is still with us. Holy shit. That poor human is going to have some serious PTSD. Wait, post-traumatic. Yeah, I always feel like I say that wrong. From their time in Seattle, right? Good Lord. That like the shooting situation in the Chop was traumatic, but that was nothing compared to what happened just a couple days later. Fucking bananas. Anyway, we should get moving on. It's not going to get much more cheerful, but before we move on to the Epstein documentary, and of course all the crazy news that's popping off now, when we last recorded, is it Ghislaine? I can never. It's been a while since I saw the documentary.
I think it's Ghislaine.
Ghislaine. She was still at large when we recorded, right? She hadn't been
Yeah.
captured. That's
no,
how
she hadn't.
recent
They
that
had.
is.
I think they knew where she was, but they were waiting to move on her.
Yeah.
They like let her go for a while because I don't think they were even investigating her at the time,
She
were they?
Didn't seem
Yeah,
like
she
it.
wasn't like.
Or
a-
she wasn't even in the country. Which
yeah,
one
well,
was it?
she
That it?
wasn't. She wasn't wanted for anything, right? She wasn't.
Not really.
Yeah.
I don't know what it was. Everyone kept asking. It was like, why the fuck aren't you going after her?
Yeah.
Fair.
No,
Well,
they
especially
no,
after the documentary.
She was wanted. They she
Person
managed
of
to
interest.
supposedly evade them for a while, but
Oh, she was getting basically put away like by people with a lot of money, that were holding her, in private little areas so she wouldn't be found.
could be. Or I'm pretty sure that they knew where she was at all times.
Oh, well, probably.
Well, before we get on to that, we have to talk about the movie that we watched 6 months ago.
Yeah, 6 months.
Swiss
6
Army
years
Man.
ago. All right.
Now it was. I had no idea what to expect.
Yeah. Do you
Really?
want to give a brief synopsis of the flick?
Yeah, why don't you do that, Chris? I'm gonna pour me another whisk since this was your pick, and go from the synopsis. Tell us. I think I have at least a few ideas, but tell us what it was that you thought would make this a great one for us to watch for our cinema wacky times.
Let me. I actually pulled up some trivia on IMDb, and there's some gems in here. This is kind of an indie film made in 2016 by a couple of guys named Dan Kwan and Daniel Scheinert, excuse me, and it stars Daniel Radcliffe and Paul. Is it Paul Dano? I can't
Paul
remember his
Dano, yeah.
first name. Yeah, so there's every person that's really involved in this has Dan in their names. It's kind of interesting.
Easy, you just blame Dan when it went wrong.
Here is the very brief synopsis from IMDb. A hopeless man stranded on a deserted island befriends a dead body, and together they go on a surreal journey to get home. And it's full of fucking corpse fart jokes. Daniel Radcliffe plays the corpse, and as Paul
Fart
Dano
and vomit jokes.
and corpse boner jokes.
That was
Come
the
on,
first surprise.
Yeah.
And when we watched these together in the Netflix party, we're all chatting, of course, and I'm like, holy shit, 3 fart jokes within like the first 15 minutes. And Christopher's like, oh,
Let me-
just you wait.
Oh, just wait. In fact, that's a perfect gateway to my first IMDb trivia. Paul Dano revealed in an interview that he wanted to do the movie after hearing a one-sentence synopsis from the directors. Specifically, directors told Dano that they wanted to make a movie where the first fart makes you laugh and the last fart makes you cry.
And it's true. It is true. They
Oh,
somehow
my
pulled
fucking
it
God.
off. Mhm. Well,
Yeah.
it begins with Paul Dano's character. What are the character names, by the way? We just need Paul's and
Manny was
Random.
the corpse.
Manny was the
and
corpse. Okay.
I can't remember the. I don't have it in my head yet.
Paul Dano's character is
Paul Dano's character was named Hank Thompson,
Hank
which is a reference to Tom Hanks, who starred in Castaway.
No relation. But
Well, he tries to hang. He goes to hang himself,
character.
and then I can't remember. Does he fail or does he just stop because he sees something?
I can't remember. I think he stops and
washing
then he
ashore?
slips. The rope breaks anyways or something.
It was a fail. It was a botch attempt. It didn't go through, and so thus. But that's the first mystery for me. Was okay. This is all wacky because everything that happens in this movie henceforth is wacky. So my first thought was, well, did he go through with the, like, was the suicide effective, and now he's in some sort of wacky afterlife? That was my first puzzle.
Yeah,
and
like he was.
then-
Yeah.
I
Never really
thought
got
it was
solved.
more like he was stuck in his own fucking head
Yeah.
throughout the whole movie. That's the way I interpreted it. Is
Definitely got
like,
that feeling.
everything was playing cuckoo babadooku in his head the entire time while he was trying to figure out, between the little missing pieces, is what I took from it. But
And then there's the, the super awkward stuff, the sexual stuff, the coming of age thing, where it's like just trying to figure out who he is, what he's into. Sex stuff kept on coming up. So I guess let's start there. Did you guys feel like this was like mental illness? Do you think that he hung himself and died and this was some sort of like purgatory toward the afterlife, or this just was the afterlife? What are your thoughts on where this world was actually taking place?
Oh, I think this was a very real situation, and the fact that the last line of the movie is the girl going, "What the fuck?" Like, I think, well, I could be wrong, but to me, maybe it's up to interpretation. But to me, that says that this was a real thing, and it's just what the fuck.
Well, so in your estimation, was Manny just a corpse that Hank was carrying around the whole movie? Like
I
just
don't know.
dragging?
I think
Or do you
there
think
was.
he's
kind
just
of like
imagine.
Weekend at Bernie's.
I think that there was something special.
I got the impression. I got. I got the impression that so Manny was Paul Dano, right?
No.
Manny was Manny was the corpse. So
Okay, so
Manny was Harry
Daniel
Potter.
Radcliffe.
Hank was Paul Dano. Okay.
Yeah.
I got the impression at the end that Hank was possibly had some kind of mental illness and he'd been like hiding out. He had gone out into the woods and had been like just having some experience in
That seemed real.
in the woods and stuff, and stumbled across a corpse. Who knows how it got there, and then continued to have his experience with like working through his problems with the corpse.
Right.
And then when he came back to society, as it were, that's why they were like, what the fuck, you know what I mean?
Exactly.
But that's kind of the impression that I got. But like there's like really nothing, like this movie is very ambiguous, and
Yeah.
but that's just how I interpreted it. Kind of like what Lyle was saying.
Yeah, I was gonna say, like, John Mark pretty much nailed it. The thing that really bothered me about it was it never directed you down that aisle of like the guy was a corpse or not. He made it act like he was like imaginary kind of friend. And I think if they would have stuck to their guns either way, they would have either made it a comedy, then it would have stuck. They would have made it semi-serious. It would have stuck harder with me. I think what they should have done is during the movie, as it slowly progressed through time, is show the corpse and in its true nature, as it's kind of like slowly kind of decaying, as it's dead. You know what I mean? While he's still in his cuckoo world, like he'd still dress him up and he's still looking, he's still smiling, he's still farting, but like have those situations
Still
where he's
popping
dragging him
boners.
around. Well, when he's dragging him around, like his arm falling off or something, like a Weekend at Bernie's, that would have been a little
That's
bit
kind of the
locked you
genius
in.
of it, though.
Yeah.
That's kind of the genius of it, though, is that it like
It lost me.
leaves it that
I couldn't get into it. I
ambiguity.
hated it.
Oh, you hated it?
That's
I
interesting.
hated it.
Wow.
A lot of the jokes weren't even really that funny.
Huh.
I think if they would have went either way, they would have made it just a strict comedy.
You wanted
where
it to
it
be
went that way,
either Weekend
or
at Bernie's or a horror
have it-
movie.
Well, no, have it like when I say that, I mean like to know that the corpse is dead. You know what I
don't
mean?
know, dude. I was
You could
laughing
still-
my fucking ass
you could-
off out loud. I don't really do
Me
that.
too.
Could have been because I was pretty fucking much.
I was sober,
cheeks
so.
to the wind, but Jesus Christ.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That was the
Well,
second view for me. It still caught me off guard.
Well, what I liked about I'm finding things to cling to in all your theories, actually, because one key thing was that Manny couldn't really remember anything, and so his discussions with Hank in trying to like remember and come to terms with what life was is forcing Hank to sort of process some of his own shit. There were some really beautiful moments in there, and like really heartbreaking moments, and then almost every time that you were really starting to feel some shit or there's a boner, I liked that. I liked that it was a sort of schizophrenic like that. Not that I don't like a movie that can really get deep, or a movie that's just nothing but laughter, you know, something like a Dude Bro Party Massacre 3, where it's just joke after joke after joke, like it's relentless humor. I like all of that, but I enjoyed that this could go in and out. And I also I tend to be a fan of movies that don't overly explain things. You know, whether that's David Lynch or even Wes Anderson. You know, there's a lot of kooky abstractivism in Wes Anderson's movies, and those are pretty much on the nose comedies with elements of poignancy and bittersweet. He definitely does bittersweet well, but I like those movies that sort of don't really fill in all the blanks, because my favorite part about any art is the ability to take what you need from it. It's sort of like a multivitamin, you know, where you take all these things, but maybe you're fine on vitamin C, so you just piss all that out. And maybe you really need to suck up all that vitamin D. It's like whatever you need to get out of a good piece of art, you'll get out of it. You can't really do that when it's really just a straightforward comedy or straightforward horror. You know, I love movies that are metaphorical and leave a lot of what the fuck. Maybe not necessarily. You can do that. Like David Lynch was great at that, but he got a little self-indulgent from time to time. And a lot of his followers were just purely self-indulgent because they were trying to emulate their hero, David Lynch. So I don't just like movies that are sort of what the fuck just for the sake of being what the fuck. Like, I'm a big fan of Vincent Gallo. I love the movie Buffalo 66. Highly recommend it. It's one of the greatest independent movies of all time. But in my opinion, well, I think it's pretty well regarded. But he went on to do some other things, and then he kind of killed his career by making Brown Bunny. I think they were just talking about this on Rogan too, where Chloe Sevigny, however you pronounce
Savini.
Savini? Is it really that easy?
Savini. Yeah.
Savini.
Yeah. Savini.
Actually sucks his cock on camera. There's like a real
What?
blowjob in it. And it kind of just became known for that. But the rest of it was just him riding his motorcycle across the country and like moping quietly in his head. I'm like, oh, what the fuck is this? Let's get to the cock sucking. Because I knew it was like part of it going in. But I was obsessed with Vincent Gallo at the time. And it was like balls deep, no pun intended. And it was like, let's go on some weird, wacky adventure and don't, connect all the dots for me. But that one, I felt the Brown Bunny was just straight up self-indulgent. Although, I would like to go back and watch it. I haven't watched it in at least a decade and see what I think about it now. Now, that was the one that Roger Ebert reviewed. He said, this is like the worst movie of all time. And he's like, and then if all the boring motorcycle driving isn't enough to get you to leave, then the world's, what did he say? It's like the world's most depressing fellatio scene should. And it is. It's a very, very depressing cocksucking scene. And Vincent's not, he's ready for prime time with that cock. So it's not, and Chloe's a beautiful woman. It's not like it's ugly to look at, but they did it in a very depressing and strange way. I think he might be crying, actually. But that caused a big rift between Vincent and Roger Ebert, to the point where Vincent said, I hate him so much that I put a hex on him. I hope that he gets cancer and dies, which he did.
Oh, it's so crazy. It's so fucking crazy. It's like,
but they did make
back
up.
then-
The good news is they did make up before Roger died. Vincent went over and had dinner with Roger Ebert, and he said that he had a lovely time. He loved Roger's wife. They all had a nice evening, and Vincent actually took some of Roger's advice and recut the movie, and then Roger gave it a more favorable review. Interesting
You know,
story.
back
there,
then, back then he could make and break a career for sure. Just that TV show.
oh fuck
Just
yeah!
so-
Film critics were
Easy.
a lot of the movies that you heard about, especially the more art house or the indie or the foreign stuff back in the 80s and early 90s. You heard about it on Siskel and Ebert, and then Siskel died, I think, of brain cancer, and then it became, what was it, Roper and Ebert, I think.
Mhm.
yeah, I think it was Roper. Yeah.
I stopped watching it because I loved it when I was younger, but I stopped watching it because of Roger Ebert. Whenever he didn't like anything, he would just purposefully spoil the movie. I thought that was kind of bullshit and catty, but there should be a documentary made about Vincent Gallo and Roger Ebert's relationship, because I'd watch it as a biopic. But getting back to this movie,
Yeah.
it did end with a laugh, but it was also very emotional. But what were your guys' thoughts on the end? Because that, I mean, if you do believe, I know that I got online and I was looking up some theories that people have, and a lot of people think that this whole thing was the afterlife, and it was Hank processing his life through the eyes of a corpse and all of it. Whether or not there was ever a corpse is sort of insignificant in that theory, I guess. He's just processing, and or he's dying. Like the entire movie is the process of Paul dying and sort of having
as he snaps, as
all
he
these-
hangs himself from the island,
Yeah.
perhaps.
And maybe he saw a
Like-
corpse out washed up on the sea. This is just my addendum to that. Maybe he saw it, and that planted that face in his head. And then as he's fading into the netherworld, he's processing.
As he's fading out, that's
Yeah.
what happens. Yeah.
That's
Yeah.
great.
It's not a bad
That's a
theory.
good theory.
I like that quite a bit.
What do you guys
That,
think?
well, see, well, okay. So what I think about what I think about what you said, and what I think about what I said and what Lyle said, is what is beautiful about this film, as fucking crass and crude and bizarre as it is, but beautiful in a way, is that it just brings up just that ambiguity. Is that
Yeah.
you have to really think about what it means to you. Like, what do you think they were trying to say? What do you think this film was about? Like, there are definitely many different paths you can take down it and say, well, this is what I think it's about, but that's all up in your interpretation. And that is the same thing. That is what is so beautiful about music and lyrics in general, is that, like, there's many bands that you can interpret their lyrics to mean one thing, and you ask 5 other people what they think that song means, and it's going to mean 5 different things to them, and
Yeah.
that's it. And that just, to me, when there's that difference of opinion about what it means, that means that was masterfully crafted. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Because when you write a song or write a book or a story or do any piece of art, and it's like, this is what I'm trying to say, and every single person gets that thing, that's cool. But when it's a little bit ambiguous, it's even better, I think.
Yeah.
Because
I agree.
because it means more in a way.
It's like laying tracks, but you get to drive the train. You're still within the confines of the tracks, but I just prefer those movies. It's kind of why I got out of. There's been very few Hollywood movies. I feel like Hollywood movies are better than they've been in a long time in a lot of ways, and yet I went down that path so long that I was too bitter. Like I couldn't quite cling to Hollywood long enough to make it to, does that kind of make sense? Even though I'm still able to see some cracks in the shit, but Hollywood has had traditionally they've had a very hard time greenlighting productions that don't treat the audience like they're fucking dipshits. That's what Hollywood usually wants. So the fact that that you could see this in theaters, not all, I think this was a smaller release, but there are other examples. I would even put like Daredevil, or not Daredevil, a Deadpool in that example. It's like, yeah, it's a comic book movie and it's got all the same tropes, but they're doing shit that I ain't ever seen in a fucking comic book movie. In that the tone and the comedy and the sex and the
wrap it up to the end of that. And I think we might be mistaken what I'm saying about like the whole. I don't want it to be a horror movie, but like the end of it, like when the rationality of the lady that he's been stalking, like in the kid part where he's a corpse. And maybe it's just me. Maybe it's just the way I think I would have done it if I was if it was my film. But it seemed to me that like it needed some kind of like just a herc jerk to fucking go whoa and snap you the fuck out of it. Like, dude, this guy's fucking crazy. He literally has a corpse here. Even though you spent the whole hour and a half sitting there having a
that's
fun
kind of
time,
how I expected it to end.
Doing your own thing, because that's how it did end. If you think about it, when they all started walking down to the end scene and they started finding the little bus that was all made up and like, you made this, kind of it.
That's right.
It makes me think that it was a corpse
like
there the whole time. You know what I mean? Instead of like just a mentally pictured corpse in his head, like he was pretending.
So do you think those
what I
people?
mean?
No. I think he definitely found a corpse.
Yeah.
Somewhere. But I think that he was. So this is my interpretation of it. I think that he had some issues, and he went off into the woods to do whatever, either to kill himself or to, what have you, or maybe that was part of his fantasy as well, or maybe he tried to and didn't happen, but like maybe he went off into the woods and he stumbled across this corpse somehow and then just spent like a week or whatever out there working through it, or trying to work through it. And then that was what they found at the end, was the evidence of him like having lived out there for a while. Like,
well, I mean that, and like his dad,
yeah, exactly.
His dad was there at the end. He was like, he's trying to pitch it off, saying, "No, this is that corpse's wall." And he goes, "No, it's mine." And his dad knew it the whole time.
Yeah,
he knew that was his son. Yeah, and the corpse wasn't.
Yeah, for sure. But it's like I think that like he definitely maybe stumbled across a dead body. Maybe the dead body was the one that killed itself. Like once again, we don't know.
Yeah, it's all for interpretation.
You guys want a couple of fun IMDb trivia factoids about this to wrap it up? Okay, a fake version of Manny was made to be used in the film, but Daniel Radcliffe insisted on being in every shot. The dummy was only used in a few shots. Yeah, a dummy was only used in a few shots where the stunts were too dangerous for Radcliffe, but Radcliffe would still throw or toss the dummy. So he was still involved in every shot there. I thought that was cool.
I love that.
I think it's so cool. Daniel Radcliffe has stated this is his favorite film he's ever made.
That's amazing.
Yeah, I think it's neat. Songs are all a cappella and are written and recorded by Andy Hull and Robert McDowell of the Manchester Orchestra.
So glad you brought that up. It was an amazing soundtrack.
Yeah, I thought that was cool. So I don't know if you guys have ever listened to that band, but they're pretty great. Manchester Orchestra. Let's see. Oh, this is good. Due to its at times juvenile humor, particularly its avid fart jokes, many audience members walked out of the theater when the film was screened at the 2016 Sundance Film Festival.
I remember the trailers for this movie. It looked like the most ridiculous, kooky movie that you've ever seen. So what brought you to that movie? And then to the point where farts, those are probably film snobs. As opposed to people that are straight up. Because some people are offended by it. Huh?
I have.
Have you ever walked out of a movie?
I walked out of Suicide Squad.
I don't know that I have walked out of a movie. I have definitely checked out of a movie and started making fun of it like 15 minutes in. I don't know if I've ever walked out of a movie. I'm sure I
was
have.
on a date. I was on a date, and we started heavily making out.
Oh,
and I was
that's
like,
a great
fuck
reason
this
to walk out of a movie.
That's different.
God bless you, because it drives me crazy when people are practically having sex right next to me at a fucking theater. I don't know why. I typically enjoy watching people have sex.
Yeah, normally I was like, you're such a fucking voyeur. Like, really? There's no challenge when they're right there.
I got a funny story about that.
Of like having like two different things to like try to focus your attention on.
Before we move on, it's a quick one. So I've been watching all of these live streams, and you remember a while back I was telling you about that website, Instacam, that has all of these just random, they're like random webcams that people have set up that they haven't changed the default passwords.
Oh, for fuck's sake.
So anyone can access them. This website has collected them, and they claim, as I mentioned in that episode, that it was for, to announce to the world the trouble of the dangers of not securing your webcam. Which, by the way, if you have a webcam, do change the default password, because usually it's something like admin and password is password or 12345. They're all pretty standard, so it's easy to hack into it. Anyway, one of the pages that I was following during all the chop stuff, they picked up cameras that was an unlisted camera, and a dude had aimed it like at one of these intersections, and it caught a lot of things. And unlike a lot of the other feeds, there were no commentaries. People weren't constantly moving it, but so it was one that I had in my rotation that I would record and then come back and scan through. I noticed earlier on that occasionally he would the guy running the camera, not knowing anybody else was tuning in. At this point, hundreds of people, maybe even thousands of people were tuning in because it had been reshared by a very popular stream. He would occasionally just point the camera at the neighbor's window. Now, I never saw so much as a soul walking by the windows, and it wasn't like a good high def camera that you would see much anyway, but it would go from the parking lot into this back alley intersection where people were hanging out and violence kept happening to windows at a certain time of day. Anyway, I had a bunch of stuff set up on the 4th of July on my computer.
I think we talked about this.
Yeah, I covered it on the podcast at one point. But Sarah and I were out on the swing. I was smoking a cigar and, sipping a drink, and the kids were in bed, and we were watching the last of the fireworks, late 4th of July. She had left something upstairs, so she went to go grab it. And when she walked by my computer, she saw that I had set record, and up on my monitor was just surveillance footage of these windows. And she came out. She came out and she just kind of sat down, and about 3 or 4 minutes later, she's like, "So I didn't mean to creep on your computer, but I saw that you were just like looking at somebody's windows, and I have to ask about it." So I was like,
have you looked through my binoculars? For fuck's sake.
Well, that's what I told her. Like, first of all, I was like, "You're weirded out that you saw me peeping?"
That's where you draw the line.
That was kind of my exact response.
Here?
But I don't know. There was something that wigged her out about it. It was just like an accidental discovery, I suppose. But the funny thing was, I wasn't peeping on that particular occasion. It just looked like, and I knew exactly what she was talking about. I was like, "Oh, he put it back on the windows," because I had a specific reason to record that intersection that night because of all the talk from the usual feeds that I was following. But anyway, I guess it's not so funny as
one last thing I think with just wrap it up for that movie is like I'm one for all farting jokes and shit like that. I think they would have held a little bit more solitude if I was watching it with you guys, like literally in a room.
Oh sure.
Because like when it came to like some of the jokes, some of the fart jokes and stuff like that, I felt it was a sad part of the movie. It was like it wasn't there. It wasn't hitting like you would do in a masterpiece, like freaking Spaceballs or something like that. Where you set up a joke to be set up. They were just random, like the whole farting in the river, like floating like a little salmon.
Yeah,
You know, that was
riding
kind of
them.
fun. But like,
like a jet ski.
yeah.
I think Lyle, I think the problem here is that you're not able to, unfortunately, be as inebriated as we were
fucked
when we were
up.
watching
It
this.
could be. It could be
And
true.
I think that might have affected your enjoyment of this movie a little bit.
Although I bet I would wager that
I
there are
agree.
plenty of sober people that got it. I mean, listen, you get what you like, what you like, and you don't. That's what this whole thing is
Sure.
about.
I'm
Before
just saying a little bit of that might have helped.
before we give our ratings, Chris, did you have some more factoids you want to throw out?
No, the only other thing I had was, do you guys want to guess how long it took to film this movie?
4 days.
4 days.
4 days. Wrong with you.
I'd say 6 months. But
I
the
have
fact
no
that that's a
fucking clue.
question, I guess, probably means
Yeah, now I'm curious.
22
way.
days.
22 days. Well, Lyle was close.
That's pretty. That's
Which
pretty
is
good.
really low for a full-length feature film.
Sure,
Yeah.
that isn't Roger
It's-
Corman. Well, before we give our ratings, here's something that I found on NPR. So the directors, Scheinert and Kwan. Scheinert says, so the body is kind of like a metaphor for the human experience in general. We all have to fart every day and decide when and where to do it. But that became kind of like interesting to us on an academic level, as well as, wow, he says like a lot in this quote. It's hilarious that they didn't edit that out. I'm going to edit it out. Like on an academic level, as well as we have thoughts. What do we do with our thoughts that we have like these? We have to make decisions every day. And that all felt meaty enough to warrant the story. Kwan says, and then it became an interesting challenge to try to basically to find something beautiful and transcendent in the lowest common denominator, in the worst part of storytelling in some ways. And ideally, the viewers will get the same experience out of it. They'll be able to find something unexpectedly beautiful and hopefully personal in the least expected place.
That's kind of how
But
I
there's-
felt about it, actually.
Well, it's interesting. Here's another quote from Kwan. He says, so I think as far as the spectrum of things you could be ashamed of go, on one end, there's farts. It's a very simple thing to be ashamed of. But then on the other end, it's love. Our character's kind of ashamed of the fact that he wants love, but he's alone and he feels loneliness. I think that's one of the saddest things you could be ashamed of. He mentioned shame a few times, so it's interesting when you think about it in that regard as a creator of the film, dealing with shame and embarrassment. That makes a lot of sense with why you would get so many of those awkward, like an awkward boner. That's something that any guy has experienced, shame and embarrassment when, well, that's a bad time for that to pop up. Farting, of course, is, I guess, the most on the nose version of it. Dying and shitting your pants is something that we've talked about before on the show. So interesting that the filmmakers seem to be working through the idea of shame, which I hadn't really thought about until I saw that quote just now. So interesting. Well, I'll start with the voting. I'm so pissed. We had all of this worked out. We had a title for this bit. We had like we were going to give it like out of 5 boners if we liked it, or out of 5 erectile dysfunctions or something. We had something worked out, but let's just stick with boners. I'm going to give it 4 out of 5 boners. This is my kind of movie. This was funny. It was beautiful. I loved the color palette of it. I loved the soundtrack. I loved how committed and straight the actors were playing this, no matter how fucking disgusting and weird it got. Yeah, I loved it. Good pick.
I agree. I was a solid 4 boners out of 5 as well for this flick. Even the second watch, I'd forgotten. It'd been like almost 2 years, I think, since I'd seen it. So, just funny, so funny and surprising. Like surprises you along the way, which is what I dug about it. Yeah, 4 out of 5 for me.
John Mark,
I
what
was
say you?
like, when you were initially saying let's give it our scores, like the first thing that popped in my head was 4 out of 5, and I think that's because like, well, what is really a 5 out of 5 movie? Really, like, I can't even think of anything off the top of my head.
Empire Strikes Back.
Are we kidding?
That was, dude, and that was the first thing that I said without saying
Nerds.
It's a perfect
but-
movie. What are
but
you gonna
yeah.
change?
I'm gonna give it a solid 4 out of 5
Die
because
Hard.
I feel the same way, and I feel like it probably warrants repeat viewings, maybe like with a little bit of time between them, but just to kind of like, you know what I mean. So yeah, 4 to 5.
Lyle, I think we know which
you
way
guys
you're
know
leaning.
my opinion on it. I didn't hate it. I didn't hate it. I want to
Give us
give
a
it.
number.
I want to give you. I'm gonna give you. I'm gonna
Directly said I hated it.
fucking hated it. I'm gonna give it 1 boner. No, I'm gonna give it 3 boners out of 5.
That's all right. Yeah,
and
you
I
found
think it's
something
because
redeemable.
like they really, really, really should have just finished at the end like that. Because I mean, it wraps everything up in a nice little bow. You know, I think personally, because you're left to be bewildered. You don't know. You know what I mean?
Kinda
I like to
that,
know
though.
shit. So.
I get you. I totally get you. But before we move on to the Epstein thing, it's kind of an interesting question. Is there a movie that you guys all can
Die
think
Hard.
of that you would give 5 out of 5? I've got one right off the bat.
I just got another one.
I'll give it 5 boners and a fucking hand job. Die Hard.
To me, my favorite movie of all time is The Big Lebowski. I've got nothing bad to say about that movie. It influenced me on all the levels. It had a great soundtrack. It had the perfect cast. You change one element of that cast and it's a totally different movie. It's 5 out of 5. Movies don't get better than that to me. Lyle, what about you? 5 out of 5.
Die Hard.
Die Hard for realsies.
Yeah, I wouldn't lie about it.
Yeah, I bet that's
I
all
like
on
all
the top
those
of a lot of people's list.
80s shit. Between Die Hard, Lethal Weapon, all that good shit. It's
Yeah.
awesome.
I've got
That's your shit.
three films I think that I can think of that I would give 5 out of 5, and that would be Empire Strikes Back, not the special edition cut, like the original cut,
Right.
and Alien,
That was one that I thought of too.
and Return of the Living Dead.
God, so
Ooh,
good.
Return of the Living Dead is great. yeah, you can't fuck with that movie at all either.
I've got
Christopher, what
I've
about
got
you?
2 flicks. I've got 2 flicks in there, very polarized. One is The Thing, John Carpenter's The Thing.
Yeah.
It's like-
that's a
the
solid-
original?
that's-
Oh, yeah,
that's a good one.
That's hard to pick apart.
They have a
The
video
second-
game. They got a PC video game for that.
I'd like to
And
play
it-
that.
And it
Yeah.
goes by the movie. It's fucking good.
Ooh.
It's cool.
The second one is it's more of a personal favorite for me. It's Garden State, Zach Braff's movie.
Interesting.
It's that's my favorite movie of all time. It really resonated with me at a time that
That's
I
your
needed
favorite
some-
movie of all time.
It really is. Yeah, I love that movie.
I remember very little about it. I remember, like, do you want to hear the greatest song of all time or the greatest band of all time? And it was the Shins. It's like,
Yeah.
Well, we all have our opinions.
I
I think that threw me
I think
for that movie.
Oh, that's
now
fair.
that I think about it, I think Mad Max Fury Road is pretty much a 5 out of 5 because there's
Oh,
I can't
maybe
think of
watch that
anything
again.
that's
It's been a while.
that movie is fucking. I just bought
That's
like
a fucking
I
feast for the brain, isn't it?
I saw somebody post on Twitter like that there was like this Mad Max High Octane collection on sale on Amazon for $25, and it's like 8 fucking Blu-rays, and it's all the Mad Max films. It is like Mad Max, Road Warrior, Beyond Thunderdome, Fury Road Black and Chrome, and Fury Road in 4K plus 2 like documentaries.
Jesus. Yeah.
Damn.
And I bought it, and I watched I watched the first 3 last week, and I haven't dug into the documentaries yet. But like, I haven't seen Fury Road Black and Chrome yet because I was like, that movie, the colors and stuff. It seems like it's so important, but it's like there must be something to the black and white version that I'm not privy to yet because I haven't watched it. So that's
Sure.
kind of next on my agenda.
Yeah.
But that fucking movie is it's like yeah.
That
Yeah,
makes
we
a
probably
huge
watch it.
difference. Like the new Blade Runner was kind of like that. The way they did the cinematography and the colors. It
still haven't
was
seen
really
it.
important to the
I
movie.
still have not seen the new Blade Runner.
We should watch that. We should make that a
Let's
movie.
do
club
that.
movie.
That'll be mine.
Oh,
Oh, I was
I
gonna
haven't-
say, if
I haven't
that's
seen it
Lyle's
either.
pick. All right. Is it
Oh,
on
I love
Netflix?
Let's do it.
I'll find it. We'll
I'll
find
make
it.
sure
Come
it's
on.
Netflix.
It's so good.
I don't think it's on Netflix. We'll have to watch it on something else, but I want to watch that really bad.
What was I gonna say about Mad Max?
I got a 5-star flick I got to throw out.
Yeah.
Ex Machina. That was a fucking 5-star flick for me.
That felt like I don't know anything about them. I mean, I watched it, but I don't know anything about it. That felt like
The same,
an indie.
That was an A24 movie as well, same as this movie, Swiss Army Man.
Yeah, they seem to be
Same studio.
Was
I need to watch it again because I really liked it. And
Ugh.
did any of you guys watch Devs?
Devs?
Yeah, Devs.
No, that's a show, right?
It's a show on Hulu, and it's by the same Alex Garland, right? Is the director?
Yeah, I gotta watch that.
Oh my god, it's so fucking good.
Is it good?
Oh,
Okay.
it's so good. You got to watch it. It has that same sort of feeling like I haven't watched this kind of TV like in forever. It's like is this a new thing? Is this what TV is going to be like now? It's incredible. Watch it.
You know, I haven't bought a Blu-ray in forever, and I was just talking to Sarah about this. It's like I miss the bonus features. That's one thing we don't get on any streaming service that I know of.
Yeah.
It seems like that would be an easy enough thing to start padding some of
Well,
these
I mean,
streaming
occasionally,
services, right?
like HBO and Disney Plus will do things like Game of Thrones had like bonus making of for every episode in the last season, the last couple seasons.
I never liked
which
it
I
when
watched
the
every one
networks
of
do it.
Yeah.
I don't
Oh,
know
that's
why.
fair.
It just seems like
Yeah.
it's just it's the same thing. You know what I mean? It's like the
I
best
agree, though,
bonus
that-
features were like when they were like little mini films that some documentarian would be following the film crew. When it's like a network doing it, it just seems like it's part of a press junket, and
There was like a 10-year period when DVDs first came out where those bonus features were
all
like
about the bonus
fucking huge. You know?
well, Laserdisc was the first ones to do that. You know, a lot of those early early DVD commentaries and bonus features that we got were transferred from Laserdisc because later Laserdiscs had all this this space. You remember when Kevin Smith first did I'm pretty sure if you go back and listen to the Clerks commentary, they're saying Laserdisc, or it might have been Mallrats where they're like, fuck DVD, you know, we're doing this for Laserdisc because it was still a thing. And then like Laserdisc just went away forever. But so that's what started it all, and now we don't have it unless you buy those. So the Lord of the Rings was one that had an amazing, unbelievable amount of truly inspiring behind the
that was
scenes
insane
footage, because they had the thing called the appendices, and it was basically from like the first hour of 6 hours of bonus features was a documentary on Tolkien, and then how Peter Jackson got involved with reading Tolkien and then attaining the rights, and you know, he was inspired by the Ralph Bakshi Lord of the Rings and the Rankin Bass the Hobbit and Return of the King movies, and then it goes on to like there's a whole hour just on the Weta workshop and then building the props, and then of course the green screen stuff. All that is so boring to me to watch. Like, how much do you really need to see of green screening, or what's his kisser that does all the control capture? Andy, you know, he was Gollum, and
Andy Serkis.
He's like the king of, what's that called? Control, like
Motion capture.
Anyway,
mocap.
Yeah, that seems like forever ago. I mean, that was. But when did the Fellowship of the Ring come out? Was that the 90s or was it 2000? Like early 2000s.
It was 2000s. Yeah,
Isn't
it was
that
absolutely.
crazy?
It was like 2001 or 2002.
To me, that was when filmmaking, like, I think that was one of those movie series that everything just took like a major leap forward in terms of
2001. Yeah.
That's crazy that it's 20 years old. Good Lord. Anyway, so we need to get on to Epstein. Chris, were we doing a trivia tonight?
Fuck no.
Okay. I need to take a pee real quick, refill my whisk, and then we can finish this.
Okay, I'm back, guys. I'm back.
Somebody's back.
Wait a minute. Someone didn't go pee. They typed pee into their computer. Speaking of porn, I had a really good interview with a local cam girl.
God, that was great. I read it.
The comment, and that was all taken from a 50-minute interview that I did with her that I recorded, and it was Now, the article was comment appropriate, Wenatchee appropriate, I should say. I push it to some degree, but I still have advertisers, and I still have, I'm still working within the confines of Wenatchee with the comment. So I was going to put up that audio for the Comment podcast, which is about to get rolling here soon, but too blue, so I'm going to put it up as either a bonus or part of another podcast that we do here. It's a really interesting conversation, and Scarlett, as we call her, was very forthcoming, no pun intended, and really an interesting view into that world. Because let me ask you, Chris, as a porn watcher,
connoisseur,
regular porn. Well, listen, I watch porn. I don't ever try to make it seem like I don't watch porn, but I definitely don't watch it all that often. And I feel like I watch like one kind of porn. I don't feel like I'm into porn. I'm into like a couple of things that I see on porn. Yeah, just straight up gay. The gayer, the better.
I said cage porn.
Oh, I mean, yeah,
Okay,
whatever you said there.
cage.
But I've never dabbled in like live cam shows. Have you guys? Were you guys familiar with that?
You've never thrown a little money to a cam girl, bro?
I did one.
I barely throw money into the girls I know.
You did it? Wait, you did a cam show in the 90s?
Well, it was with a girl. It was like a thing that we did over like.
Shit, can you imagine how many tokens the crippler would get? Ka-ting, ka-ting,
No,
ka-ting.
it wasn't a public thing. It was a between two people kind of thing.
Well, we've all recorded ourselves fucking. That's not a cam
online.
show.
Like webcam, back and forth.
Well,
Oh
okay,
yeah, well that's different.
well, cybersex.
Yeah, but like
But
going on
still,
live.
It's kind of the same thing, just that the lesser audience.
Except money's
Well,
exchanged.
I've done that.
And that too.
I've jacked it in front of a girl jacking it on some sort of live stream. It was back when things weren't terribly crystal clear. But so, Chris, you have dabbled in these chat rooms? Watched
These chat rooms. What are you fucking?
Little chatters.
well, that's what they are. They're chat rooms
Well,
with.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, that's fair. Yeah, I've done that.
Regularly?
Yeah, there was a period in my life when me and my ex would actually enjoy those together. It was our stepping stones into polyamory and having a girlfriend that we shared together for a period. But yeah, I've doubled in that. It's interesting. It can be so costly if you do it, enough.
Offensively.
Well, it's free to watch the open chat rooms in a lot of these sites.
Yeah.
But yeah, I guess to get to the really good stuff, though, some of them, like Scarlett said in that interview, a lot of these people, they just give it all away. And then, if people want to interact with them and tell them what to do, that's where the coins come in. But
Sure.
She, on the other hand, doesn't really give anything away in those free rooms. If you want to see anything, unless she's in the mood to just like pull her ass out, spread it to the camera, she is pretty much just kind of chilling, washing the dishes in her underwear, and then she'll say like, tonight I'm going to do a cam show, and I'm charging $10 tickets if you want to be a part of it, and people show up, and she's turning it into a little business for herself. It's amazing.
There's a whole like production thing on some of them. They'll like swap and actually have a scenario, like they'd be all in the kitchen and have like it set up almost like a porn set, like you'd have a mom figure, a dad figure, a little, like a younger, thing, and have like a weird thing where chat controls it.
A younger
So they
little
can
thing? We should probably specify,
it's a
especially with the
threesome or a
topic we're heading
foursome.
into.
It's a sex. They'll do it. It's you tell them what to do and they'll start doing it.
Yeah.
And they get up to a certain amount and they just fucking orgy it up, and it's all live.
I guess I get the appeal.
A lot of people, what they do is they'll build it up, right? They'll build up the excitement. So like, be sitting there and take my shirt off. Look, I got my bra on. Boobies are hanging out. Ooh, a little bit. You can see a little cleavage. Ooh,
wow.
and then they dance around a little bit, and then so they get to the point where it's getting hot, and then that's when they do a private show.
I
and
want
that's when
I want Lyle to start
you
his
have
own
to pay.
cam page here.
Yeah, you have to pay to see.
I mean, at bare
We're on the
minimum, sounds
kitchen.
like he should start directing porn.
We're on the
Let's do
kitchen.
it.
We got a mom and
Yeah.
dad and a little thing, and we're gonna do sex.
Bored these days.
Yeah.
Bored these days.
Well, terrible transition. But let's talk about Epstein. Now,
Oh, soon. Oh,
when
God.
we first, I don't remember. I reached out to you guys via text a while ago. As soon as that documentary series broke, I had been waiting for it because I'd listened. There was a podcast that was basically a 6 or 8 episode series of the story of Epstein. I was like, I knew the broad strokes of it. I had no idea. And I think
I
most
didn't either.
people didn't. It's like,
We lived it.
you can't comprehend it.
We were in high school when that shit happened.
Mhm.
You know what I mean? We lived it. I remember parts of the news story, and that's what got me so much. I think it was like back then I really didn't care, because I was doing my own thing. I was doing a lot of music, a lot of drugs. It was the 90s. You know what I mean? It was like it's shit that was unrelated to me because it didn't involve me. It was before the internet.
Yeah, you couldn't follow
So-
stories like you can follow now.
No, not at all. And now it was a rude fucking awakening watching that goddamn documentary.
I mean,
was
wasn't
like,
it in the
holy
2000s
shit.
this stuff was happening? No,
It carried from the 90s, dude.
No, well, it really started, in the 90s. But, I mean, this had been going on. See, the whole mystery of Epstein, there's a lot that I had a lot of problems with this documentary series. One was that they seemed to feel satisfied. I'm spacing on this billionaire's name that he was supposedly doing like the books for. He was like the financial advisor for this billionaire. And that was where he was getting all his money. And yet the billionaire didn't have the most expensive home in New York City. Epstein did. The billionaire didn't have his own private island where presidents and musicians and famous actors were flying to on a regular basis. Yeah, royalty.
Princes. Holy shit.
And it just seemed like nothing really explained where all of that money came from. And even as they paint this overall picture, because by the time you get to the end of it, you're like, oh, this was what he was up to. But first, let's go back to the earlier days, because when I watched this documentary, I was like, how does any of this happen? And one thing that I did not take into consideration, because my mind still doesn't know how to process it, is how many of these young girls went along with it. Now, I'm not saying that it was their fault and they should have run. Well, they should have ran like crazy, but I was surprised how many kept going back, because they were trapped in this circle of fear of these powerful people that they were dealing with. That was the first big surprise with this. Was like
largely
not that
women in
surprising.
poverty, though. I mean, let's be
well,
real.
and not
right?
even
Like,
women,
young girls.
like
On drugs.
14 and 15.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Oh, yeah,
You
they
think about
definitely
drugs
shopped.
and power and money and shit like that. That's enough to keep you around, I would think.
Yeah. So it was like, okay, so he found people that they had this like sussing out process, and Ghislaine was a huge part of that. Like
they
he was
preyed on people that were already disenfranchised and
No.
Yep. And
And,
that was, and I mean, I hate to say it, but that was their first stroke of brilliance. The next stroke of brilliance was to set up basically sting operations within all of these compounds, if you will, that these exchanges were happening, so that there was evidence that this senator or that president or that prince or that famous Hollywood actor was there fucking a 14-year-old. And all of a sudden, this one man becomes one of the most powerful human beings on planet Earth because of all these more powerful people who were in his place doing nefarious things. There's an interesting debate going on right now. Well, maybe it's not interesting. I feel like Epstein was 100% absolutely a creep first. I feel like he was a creep first, and then he stumbled into this idea. A lot of people think he was just an opportunist, and that he created this thing solely as a blackmail operation. I think that's
he was definitely a creep.
That's overlooking a lot of
I think
things,
so,
man.
too.
You don't rate
I
people
think so, too.
yourself to set up
he
an
was
operation.
definitely a creep first, and then realized how he could like parlay that into something that he could use to gain
He probably
political
fucked a 14-year-old somewhere
power.
and then got one of his rich, powerful buddies in on it. And maybe the idea struck, if I film this guy, then I'll have power.
I don't even know
over him.
about that. Even like, dude, these are people like are grown fucking men, right? And just the idea of saying, hey, I could hook you up with the fucking 18-year-old or a 17-year-old. You know, you were like, what? Really? You know, they're all rich in power. They're all fucks. You know what I mean? So it's like, it would be easily to just lure them in, and they already had the entrapment. They had all the girls prostituting other girls to bring other girls to get paid.
Yeah,
You know what I mean?
That's what
It was
that's
a
what we were
huge
saying.
web. Huge web.
That's what we were saying, is that he was a creep already, and then he
Oh,
realized
I agree. I 100%
how
agree.
they could parlay that into something
Blackmail.
else.
Yeah, it's blackmail, basically.
Well, one thing that I also didn't like about the documentary was something that came and went really quickly at the very end, which is two of those victims, two of those girls that were in his house and on the island. They said that they were both at one point or another in that little secret room with like 100
video
monitors. And they could see every room in the house. They could see their own bedroom. They could see their own toilet. They could see their own shower. Everything that occurred in that entire place had been monitored and recorded. And even the girls, like, imagine having gone through all of that, what you went through, period. And then finding out that the whole thing had been recorded and watched by other people. You would think that would be the most traumatic part of it, but they both just went right to this entire thing was a blackmail operation. And so I'm like, holy shit, where is that fucking footage? Because I don't feel like they mentioned that at all in the documentary. And then when I looked it up, I couldn't find anything. I found other people asking, like, isn't this a huge part of the equation? Like, where the fuck is that footage? Can you imagine?
Right. Well,
Evidence.
they did mention when they first raided his one house in Miami, I think it was, or Florida somewhere.
Palm Beach, yeah.
Palm Beach,
California,
yeah. So when they first raided it, they did mention that there was like a bunch of things that they had found where it was like, this is probably where a computer was, like, you know what I mean? They were like, it was obvious that someone had been in there and like taken a bunch of shit away. So it was like, this is probably where a lot of the hard drives and things were that had things recorded on them were stationed, and that they had been removed. I do remember that.
I'm sure. Well, yeah, I'm sure some of it was, but they had to have confiscated something. And apparently, the FBI is currently holding on to a bunch of DVDs that was taken from, I don't know if it was the house or the island, the island compounds. But where are they? What's on them? Why? I feel like before Ghislaine was captured, I feel like that should have been like the number one thing we're talking about. I just don't feel like anyone was asking that question. And no one was given like satisfying answers. I don't believe that they made off with everything.
I think that the answers that we're looking for are still yet to come out, because
Do you think
of
they
the
will?
people that are involved, because of the people that are in the powerful positions that they are,
Like our
that are
president
involved.
of the United States. Listen, we don't know.
exactly.
We don't know
That's
who
toughy.
fucked kids and who just went to the island. I can entertain the thought that Epstein held these parties / meetings / conferences / or whatever on the island. It was a paradise retreat. That's the word I'm trying to dial up. I can buy to some degree that some of the people that got on that plane, we have a huge list of celebrities, presidents, ex-presidents, future presidents, kings, or well, not kings, but princes. We know that these people were there. Although isn't Clinton still denying that he was ever on the island? He's still denying it. That motherfucker just can't come clean.
He's denying it, but
we know he was there.
Girls that were there, they're saying yes, he was here.
And electricians.
All I saw him
Yeah,
do was have dinner. That's all we. You know what I mean? Like,
yeah.
And maybe the girls that were there were saying that, yeah, he was here on this island, but like I never saw him do anything untowards. I just saw him having dinner. So,
but that was two girls that said that out of 100 girls that could have been there.
Exactly. So. Take that for what it is. But let's get back to the point where you're talking about like where's all this like video footage, right?
Yeah.
So if we can assume, okay, let's make the assumption that he was murdered. I believe that he was murdered and did not commit suicide. So if you take that as a fact, you have to think that the same people that would have the ability to have him murdered would have the ability to have most, if not all, of that footage secreted away somewhere or destroyed. You know what I'm saying? However, there might be some of it still remaining, and that's what hopefully like Ghislaine can bring to light.
I can't imagine.
Like you would have to think that if you take for a given that he was murdered because of what he knew and who he could finger, no pun intended.
Wow,
awkward.
Dude, you thinking about prison
that
too?
They would have the same ability to have taken and confiscate all that footage. Right?
He's a target. He's a target by himself, being a pedophile in prison. You know what I mean? He's already dead. You know what I mean? So if he did kill himself, that's probably why.
I don't think so, though.
If he didn't kill himself and he was murdered out, I would think that he was smart enough to hold the evidence.
People,
you know what I mean?
That are like narcissistic like that do not think that they're ever going to be caught,
or
they're ever going to be like. That just doesn't like track for me. Like people like that are that narcissistic are not going to kill themselves because they just cannot conceive of the fact that they would ever be in that much trouble.
John Mark, I've seen the cell. I don't think he did either. It looks like a murder.
Yeah.
Obviously, it looks like a fucking murder because just by the news and everything else being so low on the ground, he seemed like he was a fairly big guy, about Chris's size. I don't believe he kind of killed himself in that angle. You know what I mean? On a bottom bunk, I don't see it.
Was it true that Ghislaine went to the same prison that they were holding Epstein? I read that somewhere, but I'd never looked it up.
The thing I wanted to say was that I believe that he was smart enough to be able to have the evidence to back himself up to get him out of any kind of problem that he needed to be, including presidents, or ex-presidents.
Well, he was ready to rock and roll if he got bail. Remember that? Sure. That was one of the last parts of. He had a whole. It's crazy to think about. If he had managed to make bail, he'd still be at large. That motherfucker would never be seen again. He'd pay to have his face altered somewhere on the other side of the world. He had places all over the globe and powerful people that were ready to help him for obvious reasons. And so it was interesting that he did not make that bail when he could have. I'm trying to look up. I feel like Ghislaine was taken to that exact same prison.
Same prison.
Because in that documentary, they made a point to point out how faulty the security and how out of date the cameras and all that stuff, and how this one prison had like many what would you call it? I guess
there's just way too
black
many
marks against its record.
Way too many.
Like things they had made mistakes. People had fallen through the cracks. I'm having a hard time dialing up the fucking words. That prison had been known to not be secure. And so they put the world's most wanted man in that prison, and then that happened. And so what do they do when they capture his right-hand gal? Put her in the same prison. I felt like that was really interesting. Did you guys see that story going around that the BBC had printed that Ghislaine Maxwell had been moved into, this is the headline, Ghislaine Maxwell moved into intensive care as coronavirus symptoms worsen. But it was dated like next week.
Yeah,
And
I don't know.
apparently that went out on
Yeah,
like
that was
official.
apparently bullshit.
Was it?
No,
I-
because I read one that said that she wasn't infected. So
That's the
and
easiest
had
thing in the
test
world to
positive.
fake. But it seemed like a lot of people saw it and they got screenshots of it coming from their official feed, like someone fucked up and jumped the gun on it. But that's been, I know the coronavirus thing has been shot down, but I hadn't heard anything solid. In fact, even when you Google BBC Ghislaine Maxwell, like there's only a few things that pop up regarding that story. But again,
Well,
the easiest thing in the world to
fact.
Photoshop.
I just remember seeing the one that I sent to you guys where it was like a thing. It was like a screenshot from Twitter that I got. That was like somebody was like laughing my ass off. They about to do it, and it was like a picture of it. And it said like Ghislaine Maxwell put in like, for whatever, for COVID or whatever.
Yeah, well,
It's like-
for a fun fact, like our prisons right now are overwhelmed with COVID-19.
Oh, for sure.
The ones
Yeah.
even in Washington have 200 cases, which is fucking fun. That's a lot, dude. It's like insane.
Yeah. So anyway, there's a lot about the documentary that I felt didn't go deep enough. But I suppose you gotta have evidence. And if
What
they
I
don't
didn't
have solid
understand was why weren't and I'm sure it's probably plea bargains, but like, why weren't some of the girls prosecuted for being involved?
Well,
You know what I mean?
That's a
Another girl.
tricky.
Yeah, because there's one girl there that she pretty much, the blonde, she seemed like she was there the whole fucking time. You know what I mean? Like
Yeah.
she
Pretty
put
sure
a
some of them
good.
were. Weren't
yeah, I
they?
think
I'm
some
pretty
of
sure
them have
were,
been.
weren't they? Yeah, they were kind of.
But that's a tricky thing because, the same way that, well, why did
I mean, would
these
you just
girls ever go
like,
back after they
plea
were raped?
bargain?
Well, hang on. Like, why did those girls ever go back when they were raped? Why would you? Whatever that psychology is probably similar to the psychology of, I'm going to go, if I'm going to go through this, I'm in this. I think these girls felt
Well,
Well,
they're
that's the
making
same
money,
psychology.
100% trapped.
That's the same psychology when someone's being domestically abused. Like, you know what I mean? It's the
Right,
same
yeah.
thing where
like
they don't feel like they can escape, and you know what I mean? It's the same
Yeah,
thing.
and it's not-
It's really the same thing.
It's not Stockholm syndrome as much as it is just an ongoing fear of powerful people that knew what they were doing. They knew how to keep these people doing what they were doing and how to keep them silent. And if that meant threatening, their 9-year-old sister or wiping out their whole family, these are probably genuine fears that these people suffered through. So it's hard to imagine recruiting more of these people, knowing what was going on there. But it's also easy to imagine that once they were in this web of super fucked up shit run by super powerful, evil people, that it was almost a lateral move. You know what I mean? To be part of their recruiting process. But I think John Mark's right. I feel like some of them are looking at legal issues concerning bringing other people into the compound.
One of the things that really rocked me was how they had that system worked up where they would get this, underage girl to come give this guy a fucking massage, say, we're going to give you $200 to do this. And then he would sexually assault them or not, depending on the case. And then he'd be like, if you have any friends that want to come do this, I'll give you $200 for referring them.
Exactly.
And then
Yeah,
you
that's-
get, they get $200 as well. It's just so predatory.
It was a pyramid scheme of rape.
In the 90s, $200 is a lot of money too. I mean, it's like four,
Well, for
five,
the
maybe
people that they
600
found,
now.
absolutely.
Especially for the people that they found, yeah. So
Yeah.
I mean, I could see it. I could see the lure of it. Money and
Fuck the
drugs.
90s. I mean,
power,
right now, $200 is a lot of money if you're fucking
Well, yeah.
poor.
for sure,
Yeah.
for sure.
But there was one woman I remember from the documentary who had recruited quite a few people, and you could tell she felt pretty fucking horrible about it. But you're talking about a victim who was in a very fucked up place. It's a tricky thing. I don't know how you approach it. I don't know how you even deal with something like that in terms of like legalities. Like, yeah, she there's no question. She brought dozens, if not more, victims to this man. Should she be held accountable for that? On the one hand, it seems like yes. On the other hand, it's like she was a victim herself. You can't apply normal rationale to these scenarios because these people themselves, now Ghislaine aside, Ghislaine's a totally different scenario. But the girls,
I don't know. I don't know so much about it because she was involved with it too. She was into it too. She was into the whole fucking scene with him.
No, that's what I'm saying. She's a different case.
They were taking the girls, and she was doing it too.
That's what I'm saying. She was a different case than these other girls that were victims recruiting their friends and getting $200. Ghislaine was a totally different case. She was his right-hand gal and absolutely should face... Here's the thing. Ghislaine knows so many things about so many powerful people.
Oh, dude.
Yep.
How do you... So where do you go? You can imagine how many people want her dead. That's an easy thought. The question is, where does she go with her legal options? Because no matter what the crime you have done, there are options if you are willing to work with the feds.
Oh, you get a good team of lawyers, and she could probably get off. We're talking like O.J. Simpson lawyers, dude. She could probably get off.
Yeah, well, I doubt she could, but
I think
who
that
knows?
the best that she can hope for is some long sentence in a fucking federal prison somewhere.
One of the cushy prisons.
And to not be fucking shivved at some point.
Yeah, I don't see her getting off.
Real quick.
Yeah.
Real quick. I text you guys this. There was a story going around. It was kind of like a rumored out, like conspiracy theory in a little bit. It was like when he died, right? There was a picture of her sitting like an open area with a book that was upside down. And the book was related to some type of conspiratorial thing of like the feds or something like that. So it was like she was leaving breadcrumbs to people, you know, because she was completely out in the open, like in some public area. Why there's paparazzi was out and taking pictures and stuff. And there's evidence of her with this book. And supposedly that book is trying to say like he was working for like, and then, like I said, it's all conspiratorial, you know, it's all could be anything. It might not be nothing, but that he was working with the feds and stuff on like he was working for them, you know, over some other shit.
That's a conspiracy theory, is that he was working for the CIA to develop like blackmail cases against a bunch of powerful people so they could do whatever they wanted to do. Yeah. That does not actually change anything about what they did.
Oh no, not at all. Like, this is after the suicide. This is after everything.
Yeah.
That's all I'm saying. I don't believe it.
Yeah. So I mean, like, no matter what, like sort of like reasons or like agenda you can ascribe to why he did what he did, like it doesn't change the fact that he did what he did. Exactly. And the people that were involved were still involved. So that just doesn't really So even if it's a real conspiracy, like it doesn't change anything. So.
It doesn't, but it would open up a lot of questions. You know what I mean? Why it continued on, why it was so public.
Well, it could implicate the CIA or whatever, but other than that, it's like, well, what? It doesn't matter. Fucking CIA is already a bunch of shit anyway. So.
Oh, for sure, but I don't know. Who knows? We'll find out. I'm sure.
Will we though? That is the ultimate question. Because
that's the question.
Here's the thing.
When's she gonna get suicided? That's what we're all asking now.
I saw somebody actually post like, come on, she's not going to die. There are way too many people looking at this case. Everyone would know that something was up. I'm like, motherfucker.
Everyone was looking at
Everyone knows something is up. Everyone knows. Like, it became the meme before coronavirus. The going meme was Epstein didn't kill himself. Everyone fucking knows something is up. So the thought that everything, these people are so powerful and so they have so much to lose. They don't fucking care if this bitch shows up tomorrow without a head. Everyone's like, whoa, that's weird. She must have
That's
found a
crazy.
box cutter
How'd that
and
happen?
cut her whole entire head off and cauterized
Paper
it.
cut.
Yeah, we let her read a biography and she sliced her. But so there's a lot of people assuming that we are going to get any kind of answers, but we're way too far out to assume that. Now, coronavirus is kind of a brilliant thing to explain away her death, but again, let's be honest, they don't need a fucking reason. They don't care. They don't care about looking, whoever these people are, they will take their chances with sawing that bitch's head off in a jail cell, or bribing somebody that'll kill their entire family if they don't shoot her in court. They will do this. I promise you, they will do this 100 times before they will let any of her words come out. It's just a question of how well she will be guarded and how easily infiltrated the system will be at this point. I don't know what to make of it. I don't know what to expect, but one of many humans that are shitting themselves right now would be Prince Andrew, I would imagine, because, he's been denying it the whole time. Of course, there's that photo with the very young version of one of the girls that's in the documentary claiming that she was straight up raped by Prince Andrew. There's a photo. Of course, you can Photoshop anything, but this was
it has her in it.
photo.
Usually,
It has
if you
her
look
in
at
it,
it
too,
close
yeah.
enough, you can kind of tell.
Yeah, well, and there were other people that knew that Prince Andrew was there, and so and Prince Andrew's answers were really strange. But we're also talking about, even if these people were 18 or 19, they were likely to have been groomed this whole time as
For sure.
underage girls to accept this world that they were in.
He's the biggest one that you could actually point a finger at as of now, besides Clinton, because he can't even point a finger at him because apparently he wasn't ever there. But the landscaper's seen him there. But like for charges that coming up, like he's the biggest on the chopping block you got. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I'm just saying. I'm thinking in a court of law. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And in facts,
I feel you.
and everything
Well,
else.
all this is.
Well,
yeah.
there's also who's that? Dershowitz. Dershowitz. Methinks he doth protest too much.
Sure. I
Yeah.
honestly believe there's fucking hundreds of people that are probably involved in it.
Oh,
Easily.
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 Yeah. So I don't think that it's appropriate to assume that everybody that had ever known this guy and had ever been to his house or been to this island or been on this plane
No,
were
that's true.
part of the overall story, because
Yeah.
I not even
they
knew about
couldn't
it.
be, because you can't, otherwise everyone would just know, oh yeah, this is what it came to be known as, which is Pedophile Island. I don't know how you can build it into what it was without having, it's kind of like the mafia, where there were celebrities and there were legitimate clubs and there were legitimate fronts to build this whole underworld around and underneath. It worked because they had legitimate things and unconnected, unmade men, if you will, all around them. I'm sure that this is a similar case.
Well, and you said it in the beginning. Where did his money come from? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It was a hierarchy that he made his money. I'm sure. Fucking CD shit.
Well,
it's
he
all
had
investments
he had
too.
the most expensive home in New York City, right downtown, and there's plenty of footage of him walking out that door with very young-looking girls, hand around their ass, getting into a limo, heading off. He lived, especially in those later days, he lived like a man who, like we said earlier, genuinely never thought that he would get caught. I'm having a hard time finding. Obviously the ones that everyone knows, Clinton, Kevin Spacey. On that one, knowing where Kevin Spacey landed isn't terribly surprising. Naomi Campbell, that's an odd one. Chris Tucker. Dershowitz, Alan Dershowitz. Well, this one doesn't get too deep. Anyway, yeah, the Prince Andrew thing I think will be a major thing to be looking at over the next. everyone just wants this woman to make it into a public court of law. And, you know, one of the most poignant things at the end of that documentary series on Netflix was whether he killed himself or he was murdered, Epstein was not there to face all of these victims. So they never got that act of, I don't even know how to fucking word it. They just didn't even
Closure?
get that decency. Yeah, that element of closure that a lot of victims do, facing the people that victimized them. So will they get to do that? Although there was that one judge who was like, you know what? Epstein's dead. We're going ahead with this fucking trial because these victims need to be heard. And you could see how amazing that was for those women.
Yeah. Yeah. That was incredible.
Yeah, it was. That judge is a fucking hero. But imagine if they get to face Ghislaine. That's the next best thing. And we all want to know, like, the who did what, like who's fucked here. Of course, we all want to know that, but also that element of closure, that just that moment for the victims to stand before this human piece of shit and be able to just unload on them.
Say, we know what you did.
No, I'm curious on
deal with it.
No.
I'm curious if she's gonna do plead deals where she fucking just lets the cat out of the bag and tells everything, or if she just keeps it to herself and inevitably just gets snuffed. Because that's the two of things that's gonna happen.
I think she's going to try to keep it to herself, man.
Yeah, she does. She's gonna get snuffed.
Really, I see. I'm leaning toward her trying to get. Like I said, I don't think there's any planet where this bitch is gonna walk. I think that she could, though, be facing like Rikers or, you know, some prison in Montana that's minimum security.
If she lets the cat out of the bag and she starts naming names and starts doing a lot of shit that she probably should, you know, because once she comes public, it's going to be public. If she gets knocked, you know, she gets murdered, it's going to be public knowledge. I would think in her short time, if that's what it's going to be, that you'd want to tell the truth. You know what I mean? Just come out and just fucking be done with it. Because it could save her. It could save her ass.
What narcissistic sociopathy will do to your psyche. Lyle.
If she signs up with the right lawyers, she could probably walk away with nothing just by telling them what went down.
She would have to be giving some serious shit.
That's what I'm saying, though, dude. She could be some serious shit
to get. I still don't. I can't imagine a scenario where she walks. I think that people would riot in the fucking streets, like rightfully so, if that woman walked. But I don't know. Maybe I'm wrong. But another scenario is that she gives a little. It's just really more details what we already know, and then claims that she herself was a victim of Epstein. And I got a feeling that's the most likely scenario, and that nobody's going to get anything. Nobody's going to get it. Although the victims would still be able to face her, which isn't nothing.
She might try to claim that, but the fact of the matter is that, like, she was his ticket into high society because he had no connections. His father was like a janitor or something, and a groundskeeper, some shit like that. Yeah. And his ticket into the world of high finance and high society that he eventually came circulating into was her. She had those connections with all these highfalutin people. So she was like his enabler to get him into the position to where he could do the things that he did. He didn't have those connections. She did. So he was the guy with the plan, and she was the woman with the means to enact that plan. So that's what's going on here.
Sure.
So what do you guys predict? John Mark, what's your gut telling you that will come out of this? What do you think is going to happen?
Fuck, dude, I don't know. I want to say that one part of me wants to say she's going to be suicided regardless of how it looks, because like you said, those people don't give a fuck.
Yeah, they don't care.
And they can say, and like, and especially like, think about what the media landscape is like right now, right? Like,
So they could do anything they want and be like, oh, whatever. And it's going to be fucking forgotten in like 24 hours, 48
true.
hours.
Yep.
It's like the those bees that we were all worried about.
I was never worried
killer
about
hornets.
that. Just to be clear, I was never worried about the fucking killer hornets.
Me neither.
I'd love to go back to worrying about bees.
So
Those are good days.
that's like one of the first things that I think. But then I also think that I don't know, like we don't really know as much about her as we know about Epstein, right?
No.
So we don't know if she is that same type of narcissistic sociopath that he was. Probably because they were doing the same thing together.
Yeah.
So and so there's probably some of that going on, but at the same time, she has to take into account the fact that like, oh, look what happened to your buddy, right? So she's probably having to weigh her options very carefully right now, to where if she's like, I have to think, I want to think that there's nothing that she can do that would keep her out of prison for the rest of her life, right?
Yeah.
So is it going to be prison for the rest of your life, or is it going to be prison for a while and then murdered, or is it going to be, do you think that you possibly, does she actually have the fucking audacity to think that she could possibly, like, well, if I have all this stuff, I can probably parlay it into parole or something, that she, you know what I mean? Like, it just all depends on what she thinks that she can gain from what she knows or what she doesn't know.
Well, wasn't Epstein in a prison that was kind of like that? Didn't he serve time and it was like nothing? You know, he
got to go home.
He'd sleep there.
Well,
and then
yeah, exactly.
Him out on work
fuck off.
release, and he was
exactly. But that was before times. This is a different time now.
And that was when he was charged with. I think the only thing they charged him with was like attempting. What was that? Prostitution.
Yeah, all of that
soliciting.
was bullshit. It was all bullshit. And now we know, like now the public knows what was really going on. That was before everyone really knew kind of what was happening. And now it's like, it's out there, right? So there's a lot more spotlight on this. So she should know that, like, either like if she has something on these people that is really out there, that if she has it, that it can't be like spread out upon her death. That's one thing. If she thinks that, then she will do whatever she can to get some kind of plea bargain or whatever. But if she knows that she's going to fucking die, I don't know, dude. What does a fucking narcissistic sociopath know if they're going to be murdered for what they know? Are they just going to come out with it and be like, fuck it? Or are they just going to like take it with them?
I would feel that like she kind of knows, you know what I mean? Like, you just watched your lover fucking get murked in a fucking jail, maybe, or in a prison cell. You know what I mean? Like she would murdered.
Never heard that.
Murked. Yeah. So it's kind of like one of those things. I don't know, man. I think she. It's hard to say, man. I don't know.
Something occurred to me.
I want her to confess. It's probably some kind of fucking shit like the goddamn Bohemian Grove fucking shit going on, dude.
Oh Jesus!
You know,
it's
just
so,
like
it's so deep.
that deep.
Yeah,
I bet you it's that deep.
Something occurred to me, and as I was saying, like, there's no way this bitch is gonna walk. I'm thinking of people like Sammy the Bull Gravano, who killed like 20 people, who walked and was entered in the witness protection program because he spilled the beans on John Gotti.
Right.
That's 20 murders. So who fucking knows?
Well, the thing is, though, that was 20 murders of like people who were those people that he murdered, right? The fucking information that she has potentially on people that are in like the highest echelons of society, like 1%ers. Is, you know what I'm saying? That, like, so people already right now are in a fucking tizzy about class inequality and, you know, like the inequality of money and race and all this stuff. So
sure. Me too.
If she has information about people that are in that upper class that who are already getting shit because they're billionaires or whatever, that to bring to light the fact that, oh yeah, these people are also pedophiles, that's gonna bring the whole fucking thing
That's
crashing
a huge
down,
thing,
dude.
man. That's huge.
So if that's a fact, then they have a really good reason to not want her to fucking testify. That's all I'm saying.
Chris, what's your heart telling you?
God, I just can't imagine a world where she lives. I think she's gonna get suicided. I hate to say it. I just, in a world where like Donald Trump can just deny everything that ever comes up that's negative, and his followers still believe it.
Yeah, how crazy is it that there is video? Like, we know Trump and Epstein partied together. That's not debatable.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Now, Trump has said that, he disavowed Epstein decades before any of this shit popped up. And he claimed that he didn't like the guy. Maybe. But we know that what we know is that at one point they were friends.
We know he's
together.
full of
There's
shit.
footage of it. Well, yeah, we also know he's Trump. That's a factor that is worth bringing up. The president of the United States of America, the sitting president, is involved with this story personally. A president, which, by the way, does not have a grand
There's
record.
actual video.
This isn't like a president where we don't have any shit on, right? It's not like, well, Trump has not been accused of or been proven to do anything nefarious in the past, so let's give him the benefit of doubt. That's not the president we have. We know that he is a fuck stain and has been provedly, or provably. Which one is it? Provably. A shithead, and he's tied to the story. That's one more fucking insane element to it. Nothing's gonna surprise me. That I can say. But my prediction too is that she won't live to see the option to put out any of these names or stories. But if she does, I don't think it's going to be as satisfying as we hope. I think it will be, she'll throw out a few bones and claim that, she was groomed by Epstein herself.
That's why I think
we all know that there's no fucking way that we're going to get some satisfaction from this. We know that for a fact.
I think she's going to play the sympathy card like you said, and try to make herself as a victim. But I do believe, I honestly believe it's as deep as like Bohemian Grove. I bet you it goes fucking deep, and she's not going to fucking
100%. 100%. But I could be wrong, but I think Bohemian Grove, as far as we know, is mostly an American institution. This is national or international. Yeah. A motherfucker had. Yeah. Well, anyway, I think that probably about covers it. I mean, I got no more to say on it unless y'all do. Highly, highly recommend this documentary. For as dark and depressing and tragic as the story is, it's fascinating and gripping because you just keep asking yourself, how was this allowed to happen by so many people? And there's only one explanation, and that's because the more people he got involved and the more powerful people knew about it and were partaking. I mean, it's kind of an easy thing to understand.
Money and blackmail, man.
Except it's still hard to process. And the motherfucker, who knows what he recorded. Can you imagine? And anyone that got a hold of any footage, what a strange job to have to sit down and go through those tapes.
Yeah, because it was years. It wasn't like a couple of years. It was years. It was decades, that abuse.
And you got to watch it frame by frame. Obviously, it's not going to be down to one person, but that's part of your job. You got to sit and watch teenagers being raped.
And that's the whole thing of it all. That might not be all the evidence. You know what I mean? She might know where there's a fucking a cache of fucking in a fucking hidden room in his fucking goddamn island where all the evidence is.
This dude probably had every.
You know it.
The plane.
She probably knows.
The
She
plane
knows.
was going to be bugged. The plane was recording every conversation, was videotaping every conversation. All those people that thought they were safe, back in the the whole plane was a VIP section, but smoking cigars and drinking fancy cocktails and slapping the asses of 14-year-olds, whatever the fuck. Or even if it wasn't the pedophile group on that particular flight, it was just a bunch of Hollywood elites and some politicians that weren't involved with this stuff. Whatever they were talking about, they would have assumed was off the record, was boys being boys, as they say. And so who knows what has been captured by this guy's cameras and microphones over the decades. It's like it's one of the biggest stories in the last 100 years. And this is kind of the final chapter. Like Ghislaine being captured is like the final, it's at least the final hope of next level disclosure. It's not redemption, but the only good she can do at this point is get herself to a fucking camera and spill as many beans as she can before someone walks up behind her and chops her fucking head off.
I agree.
Who's going to believe what? It's going to be one of those things where anyone that is named in her rambles can be like, that's not true. You know, like he said, she said. I don't know.
Where's the proof? She might have the proof. You never know.
What could
That's an interesting question. What does she know?
I think though.
Maybe she knows that there's a bank of DVDs stored.
If she does
vault.
finger a bunch of people, I think that like at this point, what does she have to lose? You know what I mean? Like, why wouldn't she tell the truth? If she, you know what I'm saying? Either she's not going to say anything or she's going to tell the truth. You know what I mean?
I think she would be pretty believed if she started spilling names.
Yeah. I would like to know personally, just out of curiosity, but like more so, I'd rather her spill the beans so the victims could have, their closure, because they need it. If you look at all the people that were in that documentary, most of them are really strong, independent women, and they've all pretty much come to their conclusions and are moved on with their lives. But it would be something cool to give them that closure.
Well, it's funny. I keep changing my mind about things. Chris's point is interesting because let's say she does somehow manage to, like, someone just manages somehow to sneak into prison and get an iPhone in there. And she's like, and she names Trump as one of the rapists on Fuck Island, as it came to be known. Half of the United States wouldn't believe that, simply because they don't want to, because they believe in their president, right? So
well,
Chris, I think Chris makes
like
a point.
35%.
I don't think that everyone is necessarily going to believe what comes out of her mouth. But still, that's her last act. That's her last chance to be a human being. But we can't possibly hold out that hope for somebody like this. Well, what did we learn here tonight, folks? So let's end on so are we, while I'm sitting here, let's see. So Lyle's pick for the next movie. I want to do this soon. I feel like watching a movie with you all.
They have it on Amazon Prime, but you have to rent it.
Well, we need to do this on Netflix if we're going to do the...
Sure. Well, I'll have to look around then.
Why don't we look into that app that Leah used? It sure looked cool. I mean, we only had two people jump on with us for the last one, so
was it only two?
Right.
It's so funny because I don't pay attention to how many people we got in there.
One of them we didn't even know.
Yes, I'm like, who the fuck is this? One of them we didn't know. Yeah, well, we don't do enough promotion and we don't do enough heads up, and people still don't even know what the fuck we're doing. But yeah, we'll look into it. But I think Lyle's got a pick, and then it'll be my turn, and you will all be sorry when it's my turn. I got something stored. But we'll do that soon. And thanks for putting up with us in the delay of getting it. Talking about Swiss Army Man, but as I'm sure you can understand life has been very lifey of late. It was impossible to not talk about COVID, not talk about Black Lives Matter, and not talk about these protests, the murders, the people fucking getting run down in the streets. It's crazy right now. It's fucking crazy. And all these stories are happening at once. And it doesn't feel right sometimes going right into just talking about kooky movies, but I think I'm ready. I think I'm ready for the next movie night. RadarStationArt@gmail.com. We were going to do some emails tonight. I feel like we will get back onto a structure, but like I said, fuck it. We're doing what we're doing right now. We'll get back into the initial How Bizarre structure soon enough, but next episode, we'll just do an entire episode of listener feedback, and then we'll end with some weird trivia, hopefully. And until then, we'll see y'all. RadarStationArt@gmail.com. You got plenty of time to send us your show comments. Be honest with us. What do you think? What do you think of the show? What do you like about it? What do you hate about it? What do you want to see more of? What would you like to see us go away from? Or if you got a spooky story, or if you've witnessed something in your own town, political, whatever. Get it off your chest. Send it to RadarStationArt@gmail.com. Next week, we will be reading all the good ones on air and discussing. That'll be the whole show. Looking forward to that, because you guys always have great, informative, and sometimes painfully honest feedback. But we appreciate it all. So, tune in next week. That and maybe a dash of 9/11. The good old days. See y'all.
Gives it 5 bummers and a fucking hand job.